August 9th, 2021. It's 1800 hours. I hereby call this meeting to order. At this time, I'd like to ask Matthew Kazmierzak to go over the rules for our Zoom meeting, so both the commissioners understand the process and those in our audience understand the process. Matthew?
Thank you. For the commissioners, what we will do, all votes will be done via roll call, including the quorum, call for quorum that Janelle will go through and do with it. We ask that as we go through the presentations, the process will be that the staff will give presentations. And then once the presentations are provided, we will move to public comments. Then once public comments are done, we'll move to the commissioner comments and questions. Ideally, you would raise your hand in the Zoom function, and that way that Dan and I can see that someone has a comment or question, and we can call on you, and we will go through those as the hands get raised. If you think of a question, you can re-raise your hand again multiple times. There is no limit on the number of times as you have things come up. And then we will move through those, through that process. The meeting is being recorded for audio purposes, that we save the audio for this. So those are the main highlights, Dan. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Matthew. This time, Ms. Adams, would you please conduct the roll call?
Commissioner Patel?
Present.
Commissioner Hendricks?
Can I unmute yourself?
Present.
Commissioner Head?
Present.
Commissioner Smith? Commissioner Gupta? Commissioner Henkin?
Present.
Commissioner Baines? Vice Chair Pyle?
We'll be on in a second. I just
Okay.
remembered.
And Chair Connolly?
Present.
And I believe we have,
Commissioner Pyle's here, or Vice Chair Pyle.
okay, and you have a quorum?
Great. Thank you so much. We have a quorum. I believe that our new commissioner will be joining us. Matthew, is she over on the other side by any chance?
She is not at the moment. Not that
Okay.
I see her.
All right. Are there any other commissioners that are on the other side?
And do we have Councilmember Cohen with us today?
Hi, Marley. I'm from Councilmember Cohen's office. He's
Hi,
currently
Marley.
out of state. So I'll be
Thank
here
you.
today.
Great. Thank you, Marley. Welcome. All right. We will move to our orders of the day. We have an agenda that has been online. Are there any additions or corrections to that agenda? Seeing none, can we have a motion to approve the orders of the day
So
as
moved.
written? So moved by Commissioner Head,
Second.
second by Commissioner Hendricks. Any discussion? All in favor?
I will have to do a roll call for
Please.
that. Commissioner Patel,
Agreed.
Commissioner Hendricks,
Yes.
Commissioner Head,
Yes.
Commissioner Henkin,
Yes.
Commissioner Pyle,
Yes.
Commissioner Connolly,
Yes,
and the motion passes.
very well. Please review your minutes since we have no public record.
you
Well,
do,
let
sorry.
me come back for a minute. Public record, Matthew, is that the 103 emails that we received? Is that what you're?
103 more. So I've posted copies of all the public records onto the website. So all comments that have been submitted as of 3 p.m. today from the public were submitted. And indeed, we also received a few memos from commissioners themselves. Those have also been posted to the public website. So people can refer to the website for those things.
Thank you so much. Moving on to item number 3, our consent calendar, the approval of minutes. If our commissioners could please look over the minutes of May 10th, 2021 and see if there are any errors, deletions, or corrections that need to be made to those minutes.
Dan, you do have a question from Catherine?
I'm sorry, Catherine Hendricks, Commissioner Hendricks, go ahead.
Thank you. Item 2, public record, a letter from Ken Pyle. I think we should add his title as airport commissioner, my recommendation.
Noted. We'll make that minor correction.
Are there any other corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion from a member of the commission to approve the minutes as amended. Commissioner Hendricks, did I just see your hand?
It was a boo-boo, sorry.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Henkin to approve the minutes as amended. Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second.
All right, I'll go with Commissioner Head. Second, any discussion on the topic? Hearing none, Ms. Adams, would you conduct the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Patel,
Yes.
Commissioner Hendricks,
Yes.
Commissioner Head,
Yes.
Commissioner Henkin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pyle,
Yes.
Chair Connolly.
Yes.
And it passes.
Hey, as the chair, that motion passes. We will sign those minutes and get those off to you, Matthew. Moving on to item number 4, reports and information only, report of the chair. Matthew, has former Commissioner Matsushima joined us?
I do not see her in the attendee
Okay.
list or in the panelist list.
All right, so I had an opportunity to speak with former Commissioner Matsushima, who served on this commission for 8 years. She was unable to attend our last meeting and unable to speak to the group, asked me to convey that she didn't simply bail on the meeting. She wanted to be there, but her husband Mel had passed away just a few days before. And she was just not in a position to be able to do that. And so our thoughts and prayers go out to Julie Matsushima with the loss of her husband. And she just wanted me to convey to you that she really enjoyed the last 8 years that she served on the commission, and that she's made a lot of friends along the way, and really appreciated all the support from those on the commission and those on staff that knew about the loss of her husband. So thank you so much. I have another bit of sad news to report as well. Former Commissioner Tom Cruise, who served for 4 years on this body, passed away recently. I received a call from Angelica, his wife, letting me know that he passed away of liver failure. And our thoughts and prayers go out to the Cruz family. And again, Commissioner Cruz was a very active member of our commission. He was young and had just retired, working with the City Parks and Recreation Department, I believe it was. And so it was really surprising and sad news to hear. So if you could join me in just a moment of silence for both of these individuals that have passed. Thank you. Moving on to Commissioner, my personal comments. I had the opportunity this past weekend. Actually, pretty much every day I drive by Guadalupe Gardens, and I've been concerned at what I've seen there. And I took the opportunity to take some photos of it. Those of you that have been on the commission for a while, and certainly staff knows this, there was a proposal some years back to put a soccer fields in there, so it would be much more appealing aesthetically. And the FAA turned down our or the proposal to do that, stating that there would be too much danger for those that were playing soccer and were using those fields. Unfortunately, today, and I'm going to share my screen. If I can. Okay. All right, let's see. All right, hopefully everyone can see that. This is Guadalupe Gardens today. There are a number of, it's a huge homeless encampment. In the trees, you can't see it very well, but there's actually a second-story building that's been built out there. There are boats, there are abandoned vehicles, RVs throughout this entire area. Vehicles that are obviously inoperable are out there. And as you come over Coleman Avenue, this is what you see looking down on part of that encampment with our beautiful city in the background. You've got RV Row on Ashbury Street there, right off of Coleman Avenue. This is another, tent city, and there's numerous tents all over the place there. RVs and as I said, abandoned vehicles, vehicles sitting here with no tires on them, some that have been burned out. And then you've got the nicer looking property here where the property owner is actually selling wood out in front of his property to make ends meet. But this is what, Guadalupe Gardens looks like today. The ball fields that potentially kids use have this right up against their ball fields. And I know that that the FAA had been in contact with the airport and the city over the challenges in that area. And certainly if it's too dangerous for us to allow kids to play soccer in that area, it's too dangerous for us to allow people to live there, because although folks are homeless, they are still human beings, and we shouldn't be putting them in harm's way. And so just my opinion, I know that Matthew is going to make a report about Guadalupe Gardens and some of the work and response to the FAA later in under his comments, but I'm just concerned about the number of people that we see congregating in that area, and it is directly under our flight path. So that's all that I have for my comments. Has Lisa Marie joined us at this point?
Yes, she has.
Okay. I'm going to deviate a little bit from the agenda at this point. Lisa Marie, welcome to the San Jose Airport Commission. I'd like to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to the commission, and then each of the commissioners will take an opportunity to introduce themselves to you as well.
Lisa Marie, if you want to unmute yourself, you can at this time and speak.
Okay.
There we go.
Hi there. My name's Lisa Marie Smith. My apologies for my lateness. I'm just on my way to work, so I had to stop at a Starbucks to get online. Anyway, yeah, I'm excited about this new volunteer position, and hope to learn a lot and be able to help out my city.
Well, thank you, Lisa. My name is Dan Conley. I'm the chair of the Airport Commission. I've been on the commission for about 6 years, and joined because I had an interest in addressing back in those days some security issues, and have enjoyed the opportunity that I've had. And we look forward to your service on the commission as well, and getting to know you, hopefully in an in-person setting in November. Vice Chair Pyle.
Welcome aboard, Lisa Marie. I joined the commission 4 years ago, and the airport is a jewel of the city of San Jose. It's a great economic development engine, and I think it has even more potential. And I think Dan gets the prize today for the best backdrop. So,
Commissioner Head, who is also a former city council member.
Good evening, Lisa Marie. I'm just starting my second four-year term on the commission, and I fulfill a citywide position. Look forward to working with you. And as Ken said, I have a long-term interest in aviation and SJC in particular. Welcome aboard.
Well, thank you.
Commissioner Henkin.
Hello, Lisa Marie. Yeah, my name is Bob Henkin. A couple of years into my first term, really enjoying being on the commission. Previous city employee for a number of years, and got this opportunity to give back to the city again. So I'm looking forward to working with you on the commission.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hendricks.
Welcome, Lisa Marie. My name is Kathy Hendricks, and I'm on my 6th year on the commission. I also have a deep interest in security and in aviation, and I'm looking forward to working with you. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Commissioner Patel.
Hi, Lisa. My name's Nick Patel. I'm a new member of the Airport Commission. I joined the commission to represent District 7 and to kind of do my part in the community. I've always had a passion for aviation. I started to get my private pilot's license, so planes have always interested me. So this is just one more path to the gates.
Thank you.
Have I missed any of the commissioners that are present in our meeting? All right. Lisa Marie, thank you so much for being a part of and joining the Airport Commission. We look forward to working with you, and welcome to your first meeting. At this time, we'll move on to item number 4B, the director's report. There will be no director's report this evening. Assistant Director Ross was to report on COVID and also on the Guadalupe Gardens situation, and that'll be deferred down to Matthew Kazmierzak in staff reports. I'm sorry to report that neither Director Aiken or Assistant Director Ross is with us this evening. I know that there are a lot of folks that are joining from the community, which is not normal unless there are hot topic issues. And I'm sorry to report that Councilmember Cohen's not been able to join us this evening, but he does have his staff member here to answer questions. At this time, I'll move to item 4C, our council liaison report. Is there any report from Councilmember Cohen?
No, I do not have a report. Thank you.
Thank you, Marley. Moving on to item 4D, staff report. Matthew, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to give an update for the airport as to what's been going on here. So for COVID actions, is to let folks know, is the city itself has moved away from having its EOC open. So the city has closed down its EOC. So staff have started returning to their regular jobs. A lot of airport staff were assisting the city with emergency operations activities related to COVID. TSA currently has a mask requirement at all areas of transportation. So the one for the airport's currently set to expire on September 13th. Given everything right now, my own personal prognostication is that I'd expect to see that be extended at some point. I know that probably won't make some folks happy, but given everything, it's likely to be, it's likely to be the situation. In the month of July, we had over 400,000 passengers through our checkpoints, compared to about 670,000 in 2019 pre-COVID. So we're off by about 40% or so off of where we used to be before COVID. However, this also represents an improvement from June when we were off by 45%. And then May we were off by 53%. So things are slowly improving. And if you saw the article in this weekend's newspaper, that actually did a very good job of explaining the situation for airports in the Bay Area as to some of the challenges that still exist and how things have slowly changed over time. We're hoping those continue to see those continued improvements. Airlines are continuing to resume their services. The airlines recently relaunched connections to Atlanta, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Chicago. So those are all good things to see restarted. Just to let you know too, is San Jose, in partnership with the San Jose City Public Library, has announced the installment of a pop-up library, an e-library, that offers a free service to members of the traveling public to download an ebook. They can go online at gates 12 and 24 and download books for free in English and Spanish. And all you need is a Wi-Fi connection to get it. And you're allowed to check out the books for 3 weeks. On the concession side, our concessions, we continue to reopen new concessions. So Trader Vic's Outpost and Trader Vic's Restaurant are now open. Club San Jose at gate 15 has reopened. Challenges still exist on the concession side. You know, the labor issues that you hear about in the news continue to be a challenge of trying to get people back to their offices. And we have the same issues for the concession staff. For Guadalupe Gardens, so as many folks have seen and the commissioners know through the documents I shared with you, the FAA has provided us with notice that the lands in Guadalupe Gardens were not proper lands for a homelessness encampment. So through a number of conversations at the city and conversations with the FAA, the airport did submit a corrective action plan on July 28th. That corrective action plan included 3 stages of trying to address the abatement activities. And the plan has been accepted by the FAA. We've received notice that they've accepted that plan. The city will start the abatement process in the next couple months. And all 3 stages we expect to be completed in the summer of 2022. Each stage, though, will go through a lengthy process of offering outreach of homelessness services to the folks there, of communicating the intentions of doing legal postings, debris removal, trash removal, abating that goes with it, fencing that happens after the abatement process, soil remediation, and monitoring. So we will be going through all those things and working with multiple departments. The goal of both the FAA and the airport is to approach this in a humane fashion and try and provide services to those that are ready, willing, and able to take advantage of our homelessness services that the city has to offer. The city is in the process right now of building tiny homes. Those will be completed in 2022. So the staged approach allows some of this to happen as we're getting additional housing on board for the individuals in that area. And then finally, the work plan that was approved at the last Airport Commission meeting has been submitted to the Transportation and Environment Committee for the City Council. That will be on the City Council agenda, the Transportation and Environment Committee agenda on August 30th. And I'll be presenting that to them. That was approved by you guys without issue, as well as the annual report that we do as well. That was also approved by you guys. And that is my report, Dan.
Thank you, Matthew. A couple of questions that I have for you. Have we been experiencing any fuel shortage difficulties at SJC like have been experienced at different airports across the nation?
Good question. We have not. The airport has a direct pipeline to the refineries. And so we don't experience the fuel shortages that other places have had that often need to have the fuel shipped in via truck or elsewhere. We're also not a location for many of the firefighting activities that have been happening, which is one of the reasons why for some of the fuel shortages in some of those areas that have seen an uptick in air traffic.
Yeah, I know that certainly Stead Airport, which is north of Reno, had firefighting aircraft go in there and were unable to get fuel for their firefighting activities. And so I wanted to ask where we stood on that. The second question that I had on my list was you sent letters out to the commission from the FAA, and some of those letters that I have are dated 2019. And I'd like you to help explain to the commission the difference between the 2019 and the 2021 letters, if you would, please.
Sure. In the very first letter that the FAA sent to the airport this year, so in the very first reference that they had to Guadalupe Gardens, which is the current issue, the FAA erroneously linked it to Hope Village. So Hope Village was a encampment that existed on Rough Drive next to Rough and the Guadalupe Gardens. And that was an encampment of 8 to 10 people that the county had set up. And was providing services to. That was back in 2019. The FAA did communicate to us that that was not an appropriate use of the land. All of this land that we're discussing here is within the inner safety zone of the runway. It's not zoned for residential use. It's within a noise issue area. So the FAA has communicated at that time. That land at that time was cleared, was fenced off, has remained cleared, and we continue to periodically monitor that area, and it remains free of encampment. So when they referenced Hope Village, they're mistakenly referencing a previous portion of that area that was not re-inhabited. The part that is now inhabited with the encampment activity is entirely separate from that letter.
So the Guadalupe Garden issue, the first letter that we received on that was roughly February or March of this year.
Correct.
And so not from the 2019 issue. I wanted to make sure to clarify that. I'd also like to ask, just on behalf of the commission, that if it's always frustrating, I think, for some of us to find out our news through the news media and not through the airport. And so if there are issues with the FAA, I believe I speak for the majority of our commission members, it would be nice to hear from you guys first instead of, getting a question from a media outlet about something that we may not be aware of. And so I'd just like to ask for a little diligence on that topic, if we could, please.
Sure. The challenge sometimes is that, again, as this issue is a very delicate issue that requiring the coordination amongst multiple departments. While the stuff you see in the media might seem easy, at times we coordinate the activity and the responses to the media through various groups. So this Guadalupe Gardens is 3 different departments within the city coordinating activities in conjunction with the FAA and elsewhere to try and get responses out and to come up with a plan that properly addresses this. Again, that there is a need to balance the desire to have the land be put back to its proper use, as well as to address the needs of the people that are currently unhoused in that area, and try and do that in a fashion that is humane and has some sort of thing that just doesn't push the people into a different part of the city. These are all things that the city itself just doesn't want to deal with. We want to try and have something available to people before we start abating the property. So we will endeavor to keep you guys informed as we can, and we'll do our best to continue to keep the communication going.
Are there questions from members of the commission on any of the reports that Matthew has given? Ken Pyle, unmute yourself, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew, for the presentation and the explanation on the Guadalupe Gardens. I submitted something which I appreciate you've already gotten online, and so people can look at the details of that regarding the Guadalupe Gardens. And I guess just a couple of observations / questions. I won't go into the details of that document, but one thing I observed is that if you look at the stewardship of the property, the actual airport property on the north side of 880 there, if you look at the example of the cell phone lot next to that, there's about an acre or something like that that's pristine. There are no encampments, and I keep thinking to myself, the city of San Jose should have prevented encampments from happening in the first place, then we wouldn't be here. The other concern I have is if we put a fence up, it'll never come down, and that land will just be there fallow, kind of like the land that's at the corner of Heading and Coleman, which was fenced a couple of years ago because of the same issue. And my question, the last question is, well, it was fenced for whatever issue it was fenced. Yeah. So the fundamental question that I think would be very valuable to know is what can be done with that property. And in the letter, I threw out just bunches of ideas, but it would be nice to actually have that in writing, what we think can be done. I know there's, the FAA has they seem to be the overruling one, as long as they have the financial strings of it giving us the money. So these don't necessarily need to be answered, tonight, because there's a lot to unpack there. But I think those are important things, and we may not get a chance to discuss this, particularly the fencing, before it goes back to the commission. So that's why I wanted to put that out.
Let me answer 2 of the parts here. One is the other property that you referenced, the fenced off land that's currently fenced off, that is between 880 and, I want to say it's Heading, or I always.
Yeah.
Heading. That's actually a burrowing owl habitat.
Right,
We
right.
have to have that land set aside for, if we can encourage, burrowing owls to inhabit that area.
But it was fenced off so people couldn't incur,
Well,
go into
it was
it.
fenced
Right.
off for the purposes of leaving the land available to the burrowing owls.
Right,
So that's,
right.
that's why it was fenced off. Yes, that includes, not having human activity disrupt any owls that,
Right.
may go there. As for your other question as to what can be done with land, that land, Guadalupe Gardens was paid for from the FAA. So the FAA helped provide the funding to buy that land. As a result, the FAA does have certain grant assurances that we make in keeping land around the airport for aviation use, or at least set aside for various things. We have to follow those rules when dealing with those things. And that means there's limited opportunities for the land to do things with. One of the options was leaving the land fallow. Another option was, using the land for commercial purposes. There have been a number of conversations that have gone back and forth about other possible uses. The challenge is there's also an issue where the FAA looks at this stuff and says, again, the land, if it's not being used for fallow purposes, you should be renting it at market rates. So many of the opportunities that have been raised have been assuming that the land would be donated or given at a subsidized rate. When the FAA looks at this and says, while they gave us the funding for it, they expect that funding for the land would be put to use for non-aviation revenue. So.
And in the memo, I suggest other things, including things as crazy as percolation ponds or solar farms, whatever. But it does seem like now, with the infrastructure bill in play and that being a federal initiative, that maybe there are some opportunities here that weren't there before. So
we'll take it under advisement.
Thanks.
Other questions for Matthew? All right, seeing that, Matthew, thank you. I do believe, because this is, a topic that we're going to see over the course of the next year come to completion with the abatement, that I believe that we do need to have this agendized for a report at each of our meetings moving forward. Is there any reason that can't happen?
I will certainly raise that with the director and assistant director.
All right, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
We will move on to commissioner reports. At this time, I'll open the floor to any commissioner that would like to make a report. And I can't see all of you, so if there is someone that has something to say.
Dan, I'd like to speak.
Yes, Commissioner Head, please.
Okay. Two quick things. One, I had the opportunity to fly in and out of SJC twice in July. And I wanted to report that I felt very comfortable in the professionalism that I saw, both from airport staff, federal staff, and just regular citizens going about the same thing I was doing, which were my wife and I were flying to visit family, which we'd not seen in almost 2 years because of COVID. And I thought there was a really strong goodwill among everyone participating, and it was a very pleasant experience to see everyone in masks, everyone being energetic, and what is a tough situation and is likely because of Delta remain that way. So I wanted to report that out. And then the second thing I wanted to just mention is it's difficult for practical solutions relative to a homeless situation, and the Guadalupe Gardens is certainly a prime example of that. I would encourage our staff, meaning SJC staff, to take a leadership position within the broader city staff. I would assume the Department of Housing is going to be in the lead, but that we energetically support accomplishing the goals that are set forth in the letter from Director Aiken at at least the time schedule he's laid out or earlier, and that each milestone takes place, and that we provide the goal. Our goal here is not just to satisfy the FAA from a safety point of view, but we take really energetically and seriously the responsibility to get a better life for the people in that situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Head. We'll move on. Are there any other commissioners that would like to speak at this time? I see no hands raised. We'll move on to item number 5, public comment. Members of the public are invited to speak on any item that does not appear on today's agenda and that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. Meeting attendees are usually given 2 minutes to speak on any discussion item and/or during the open forum. The time limit is at the discretion of the chair of the meeting and may be limited when appropriate. Speakers using a translator will be given twice the time allowed to ensure non-English speakers receive the same opportunity to directly address the commission. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on a topic that is not on our agenda today?
Chair Connolly, you have 2 speakers who've raised their hands.
All right.
So
Matt.
first one is your phone number ends in 319. If you can unmute yourself, I've allowed you to talk.
Hi, that's me. My name is Tina Morrill, and I live in the Vendome neighborhood, which is pretty much adjacent to the airport and certainly adjacent to the Guadalupe River Park and Gardens. And what we are dealing with in our neighborhood is, the homeless encampments. And I understand from reading in the paper that they are going to be doing abatements. I would like to encourage anybody, I'm telling everybody this, if you live in San Jose, please be open and willing to accept things like tiny homes, bridge housing, and other types of either temporary or possibly permanent housing, so that these folks who, have needs, they're human, can be, find a home within San Jose, and they are not just dumped in one area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Matthew.
Next speaker is Juliana Pendleton.
Hello, my name is Juliana Pendleton, and I'm the Environmental Advocacy Assistant for the Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society. I had the chance to speak to you during public comment at the Airport Commission's last meeting in May. It's nice to see you all again. As discussed back in May, one pervasive issue we have been focusing on is light pollution and its effects on wildlife, ecosystems, and even humans. In San Jose, there is a proposed light tower in a green park called Breeze of Innovation. Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society and other environmental groups and community members are greatly concerned about this 200-foot-tall illuminated structure because of its effects to a sensitive riparian corridor, not to mention the social and maintenance costs that will follow. This light structure is also located in the South Safety Zone of the San Jose Airport, and we are greatly concerned about the possible effects it will have on aviation traffic, which is why we bring this issue to your attention again. City Council has approved the advancement of this project, but you can visit the website nolightower.org to sign a petition voicing your concern over this light tower in downtown San Jose. Trashing the natural environment and adding more light pollution to the city of San Jose cannot be allowed to happen, and I urge you to oppose this project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Juliana.
Okay.
Are there any other speakers, Matthew?
Yes, we have 2 more. Next is Todd Williams.
Mr. Williams, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Thank you for your time. I logged on to talk about the billboard, but that's on the agenda item, but I wanted to make a quick comment. It always amazes me when I attend these meetings, including with the city, that everyone acts shocked that this abatement needs to happen. And it's almost as if the problem just happened when it's been going on for several years. And to ask for more time to develop a plan seems ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Last one is Dashiell Leeds.
Please unmute yourself and go ahead. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. My name is Dashiell Leeds. I'm the Conservation Assistant for the Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter. I'd like to echo Juliana's comments in opposition to the Breeze of Innovation Light Tower project. 200-foot tall illuminated rods would tower above the Los Gatos Creek and Guadalupe River. These massive rods could shine light pollution into the confluence of these two riparian corridors and across the city, and this could be a significant visual distraction for pilots. Light pollution affects all living beings on a deep biological level. The Asian Pacific Journal of Cancer Prevention explored the association between artificial light at night with all forms of cancer in 158 countries. Here's their conclusion. Quote, artificial light at night is significantly correlated for all forms of cancer as well as lung, breast, colorectal, and prostate cancers individually. Immediate measures should be taken to limit artificial light at night in the main cities around the world and also inside houses. End quote. This light can disrupt all sorts of behaviors in wildlife, including foraging, mating, and migration, and can be lethal for birds. The project proponents have described this light tower as a symbol of San Jose. But if that symbol would harm our residents and ecosystems, is that not a symbol of destruction? And if San Jose approves that structure, despite these warnings, what does that say about our city? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Is there anyone else, Matthew?
There is not. Those are the people that I have.
Very good. Thank you so much for the public comment. I'm going to move on to item number 6, our noise and community noise concern and reports. Adam Cordarolo, our noise and general aviation supervisor. Welcome, Adam.
Hello, good evening, commissioners. So over the last 3 months, you can see really summarized here that the standout number just is the total operations number, which just, year over year, considering where we were back in 2020 with COVID, we're, over 100% of our operations last year. So you can really see just how much we've come since that time. And even since the first quarter of this year, which tends to be the slower period, we're up by, double digits, 35%. So despite that increase in operations, we actually have had fewer complaints, which is obviously a good thing. Most of that's driven, especially quarter over quarter, by the sharp drop in south flow operations, which tends to drive the majority of our complaints. And we are up notably as well, though, in intrusions. A lot of that's due to, in May, Southwest Airlines had some computer system issues, which delayed a number of their flights for several days. And then in June, again, as flights have resumed, especially to the East Coast and Midwest, we've seen, those tend to arrive later in the day. And so when they are delayed earlier in the day, those tend to push those last arrivals and departures into the curfew period. And as well in June, we had quite a number of large weather systems, again, in the Midwest and East Coast that did delay a lot of those flights. So we are, again, tracking those numbers, but nothing that's too concerning or surprising in light of what occurred. And then if you could move to the next slide, please. So complaint numbers, again, nothing that's really too surprising here. Sunnyvale is down by a large margin, especially compared to the first quarter this year by over 100%. Again, most of that is due to the drop in south flow numbers. For Los Gatos, not such a strong correlation with south flow. That tends to be, a number of very dedicated individuals who, just depending on how much time and interest they have, send in a large number of reports or not during those specific time periods. So as I mentioned, in general, we're down in complaints, which is good. And that pretty much concludes the report numbers, but I did want to just mention that the FAA held a couple of community noise workshop meetings last month on July 20th and 21st. There was a high attendance for both of those meetings. And the goal of those was for the FAA to reach out to the public and explain various issues that has been of concern, especially with the next gen implementation since 2016. Those issues focused mainly on some of the procedures into both SFO and San Jose, the Big Sur, Surfer, and the BRICS approaches. Those were all recently or somewhat recently amended, and discussion and public comment focused mostly on the Big Sur and Surfer at SFO, but there were a few questions on bricks as well. San Jose Airport staff did participate in both of those meetings. I believe there were maybe 1 or 2 questions that really applied to San Jose's procedures or issues, but the majority of questions revolved around San Francisco. And then both of those meetings were recorded and they are posted to YouTube. We've linked to both of those recordings on our own website, and I believe the FAA has also posted to their own. So anybody who's interested in reviewing those is welcome to check them out. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Adam. Are there questions for Adam from the commission? Seeing none, thank you again,
Dan?
Adam.
Dan, you do
Yeah.
have one public comment for the
And
noise report?
I was just going to that. Thank you so much.
Sorry.
So if we have public comment for community noise reports, please go ahead and unmute yourself and speak. Who do we have, Matthew?
I believe you have Tina and as first. Let me allow her to talk.
Hi, yes, this is Tina Morrill. Because of my proximity to the airport, I just want to comment. It is very difficult to do complaints. And what I mean by that is you have to do it online. The airport used to have a phone number that you could call to leave a message. If any of this, the noise complaint, that I want to make, if it happens, late in the evening, I have to usually get out of bed, log into my computer, try to, find the noise complaint form, fill it out, and then submit it. And I was told that I need to submit a complaint when the incident happens. I can't wait till the next morning. I can't record the time and then, do it the next morning, which seems silly. But what my ask is there a number that we can text? Is there a number that we can call? I would like those things to be considered, because just because the noise complaints are, status quo or down even, doesn't mean that people aren't bothered. We are. It's just, it's not easy to submit complaints. That is my feedback. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, Matthew?
There is one other, and Todd Williams. Let me talk.
Mr. Williams, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to second what Tina said, and I would suggest a more decimal-based system for recording noise issues or time if it's after the hours. That should be an automatic complaint. And I'm also see this great report, but what's the action that's being taken based on the report? Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Again, are there any questions from the commission regarding the noise report from Adam?
So I did want to clarify one thing, Adam. I do believe that members of the public do have the ability to submit noise complaints at whatever time is appropriate for them.
That is correct. We do have a complaint line phone number that they can call, and I can give the number. It's 408-392-3535, and that number is posted on our main airport noise office website.
But they can also fill out the online form. Like
Correct.
If you had a complaint at 9 p.m. and you wanted to fill out the next morning at 8 a.m., you could do that as
Correct.
well. Okay.
Yes. On that same website, that main noise office webpage, there's a large button that just says file a noise complaint, and you can fill in any date and time you wish to make a complaint there.
Okay. Thank you, Adam.
Great. I appreciate the clarification. Again, for those in the audience that may want to take note of the telephone number, that telephone number is 408-392-3535. That's 408 392-3535. We will at this time move on to old business, which we are showing none at this time. So we'll go to item number 8, new business discussion and possible action. We will move into, and I know that we have a number of people that are going to want to speak on the billboard project. So let me just explain to you how this will work. I'm going to ask our staff to make a report. Following that, I have agreed to allow the No Billboards group. John Miller will be providing a PowerPoint presentation as well. We thought that this might be a good way to answer questions from the public and to keep public comment, from lasting us far too long. And so we've asked that group that's representing 800 people or given them the go ahead to make a presentation to us. After that, we will go into further public comment. And then after that, the commission will have a discussion. So commission members, I'd like to ask you, as you are listening to the presentations, to make your, to make notes so that you can ask those questions that you may have of staff afterwards. At this time, I'd like to invite Ryan Sheelan, Airport Planner, and Rebecca Bray, Acting Senior Property Manager, to discuss item 8A, Clear Channel Electronic Billboard Project.
Thank you, Commissioner Connolly. Good evening, Ryan Sheelan, Acting Senior Planner, Planning Development. I'm just going to do an introduction for this. So the purpose of this Airport Commission informational briefing tonight is to share on a high level the work that we have done with Clear Channel on a proposal to install 2 electric signs at the airport. This presentation is not meant to address all the questions or concerns that have been brought up, and we're strongly encouraging members of the public and the Airport Commission to participate in the public EIR comment process in order to make sure that we comment all the concerns and comments and they're appropriately recorded and addressed. So the Airport Commission will not be voting on this topic. This is not a public hearing for the EIR addendum. And this airport proposal is separate from any additional electronic sign proposals in the city of San Jose. Next slide, please. And so I'm in charge of the EIR aspect. And so the EIR addenda are actually not required to be circulated under CEQA. However, the airport has included the public comment process to ensure we give everyone the opportunity to comment. The EIR addendum public comment period runs from, it started on last month on July 26th through this month, August 25th. All public comments should be directed directly to the PBC Environmental Project Manager, Adam Peterson. His contact details are listed on this slide. And the EIR addendum can also be accessed at the link below on this slide as well. And so by submitting your comments through the formal EIR comment process, this will ensure it goes into the public record and each comment will be responded to. We want to thank you for your time as we share this presentation tonight, and I'm going to hand it off to Rebecca Bray. Thank you.
Good morning, Commission. My name is Rebecca Bray, Acting Senior Property in the Finance and Administration Division. Today, I will be providing an update on the Clear Channel Electronic Sign Project at the San Jose Airport. Before we go any further, I would like to address why we selected Clear Channel for this project. Clear Channel is our indoor and outdoor advertising partner that was selected using an RFP process back in 2007. Clear Channel has recently installed a state-of-the-art in-terminal all-digital program, and they also have a very robust outdoor billboard program that we wanted to leverage for our advertising program at the airport. This was communicated to the City Council when the citywide billboard program was being discussed back in 2019. And we will discuss that history in a little bit of a later slide. Next slide, please. So the 2 signs are located at 2200 and 2341 Airport Boulevard, respectively, facing the 101 freeway. The sign located at 2341 is located in the FedEx parking lot, and the other sign is at 2200 in a grassy area behind the new economy parking lot facing the 101 freeway. These locations were carefully selected because they are in the areas approved by City Council on Policy 6-4, and they are not located near businesses or residential areas. Next slide. So these are some of the design elements that would be put into the signs. They are V-shaped, freestanding, and oriented to be visible to vehicles on 101. They are 60 feet above the ground and measure 17 feet by 59 feet. The logo was designed to align with the airport aesthetics and also the characteristics of City Hall. They take a small footprint of 300 square feet each. The signs are double facing, and the third side is a black screen and will not display signage. The two signs orientation are not facing the approach, and each sign has automatic dimming software, custom designed shielding, photoelectric sensors that measure ambient light and reduce brightness during darker sky glow. Vertical light control is achieved through narrow matte black horizontal shields over and under lighting arrays. And the LED optics have asymmetrical downward beams to limit the amount of upward light. Next slide, please. So the terms of the agreement. The terms are from the date of installation through June 30th, 2027, based on the existing schedule. That's roughly about a 5-year term. The revenue is the greater of 55% of gross revenue or the minimum annual guarantee of $300,000 on the northern location and $190,000 for the southern location, for a guaranteed annual revenue of $490,000 for both signs. We anticipate over the 5-year term to earn a minimum of $2.5 million. One thing I do want to point out is that the north sign will have a digital LED displays, while the south sign will have a digital LED display facing south and a static or printed sign internally illuminated by backlight LED display facing north towards the riparian zone in order to reduce biological impacts. And again, for further details, these are outlined in the EIR addendum, and I encourage you to look at that. This did, by changing one of the sites to a static sign, it did reduce our minimum annual guarantee to $40,000 from in comparison to the $150,000 that we're receiving from each electronic sign. But despite that, no matter what side, we do receive the same 55% revenue share. So the total rent from that phase has potential to be greater than the minimum annual guarantee of $40,000 for that side. And this percentage rent is significantly higher than the standard for any outdoor advertising industry, significantly higher than the standard for the outdoor advertising industry. And in this circumstance, the airport has the benefit of receiving a very high revenue share due to the fact that these signs are included in the existing advertising agreement with the airport. This revenue is the highest in the Bay Area. 55% is unprecedented, and the airport does have a very high revenue share. So the capital investment is $0 by the city. The concessionaire, in this case, Clear Channel, will be responsible to incur all capital investment, including design, permitting, construction, and costs related to day-to-day operations. The airport also will receive, they can utilize up to 10% of the advertising time specifically for promoting awareness and use of our airport. Next slide. So some of the additional terms as outlined in the existing Clear Channel agreement is that Clear Channel is responsible for the management and maintenance of the digital billboards. The airport can require Clear Channel to remove the signs upon expiration of their agreement. The airport will review and approve all advertisements. And there are pre-established guidelines in the agreement related to what can be advertised on the digital billboards. And the Clear Channel will provide a 24/7 contact number, and the airport can coordinate with Clear Channel to reduce billboard lighting if requested. Next slide. So the sign operations will be in compliance with the California Department of Transportation regulations, the City Municipal Code, and Council Policy 6-4. To bring out just a few items that are addressed in Council Policy 6-4, the signs cannot have the appearance of movement. They cannot have any audio messages or neon letters. They require automatic dimming technology to adjust the brightness of the sign relative to ambient light, so that at no time shall a sign exceed the brightness level of 0.3 foot candle above ambient light. And the signs shall not be illuminated between the hours of 12 a.m. and 6 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. The signs also contain a default mechanism that will cause the signs to revert immediately to a black screen in the event that the sign malfunctions. Next slide, please. So this image shows the visibility at a measure of 6 candle distance. And a few things to highlight is that it does not face any residential areas. It is directly facing 101 freeway. And as you can see in this image, across is the airport fuel farm. The EIR addendum did include a lighting study, which evaluated potential impacts to aircraft operations. And that has been reviewed by airport operations staff along with FAA Air Traffic Control Tower. And again, it is included in the EIR addendum, and we encourage you to review that document. Next slide. So this is the same image with east facing. And again, as you can see, it is not overlooking any residential or locations, and is directly facing the 101 freeway. Next slide. So just to give a brief overview of the public forum history, in 2007, the airport did conduct an RFP for an advertising program at the airport. Clear Channel was awarded that agreement by City Council. In 2018, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on the proposed amendments to the general plan policy, the City Council policy, and the sign code changes, which included policy 6-4. City Council approved policy 6-4, which considered and approved potential sites for programmable digital signs on city property, which included 4 locations on airport property. At this time, we are only exercising 2 of those locations. And again, in August 2019, the airport stated its intent to City Council to pursue electronic signs with our existing concessionaire Clear Channel to provide for one cohesive advertising program. Next slide. So this process that we've been going through is outlined in Council Policy 6-4, and the airport has been following that that process along the way. In February 2020, the Director of Aviation provided approval to move the project forward. And again, as I mentioned, this project still needs to go through the city's entire approval process, which includes the EIR request for public comment, which is currently underway. Following that, in compliance with Council Policy 6-4, we need to fulfill the policy's public hearing requirement, and that item will go before City Council in the fall or winter of 2021. And next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Sheelan to close out the presentation.
Good evening. This is the same slide as before to encourage everyone. This is the proper forum to submit, or this is the proper method to submit public comment for the EIR addendum. Please submit it to the PBC project manager. His details are listed here, and we encourage everyone to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. At this time, we will move to our next speaker, which will be John Miller with No San Jose Billboards. And John, you'll need to coordinate with Matthew for him to move your slides accordingly.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about the 2 digital billboards being proposed for airport property. Before getting into specifics, we think you would benefit from a brief background. If you could move to the next slide, please. We wanted to define what we're talking about here. Off-premise digital billboards advertise products and services not available at the location of the billboard. And they should not be confused with signs identifying retailers, offices, or event venues. That's what we're talking about here. And we, No Digital Billboards in San Jose, we're a coalition of over 800 individuals, plus neighborhood associations and environmental and architectural and historic preservation organizations, all of which oppose allowing digital billboards because we believe they would change the historic character, the architectural integrity, and the natural environment of San Jose. I think we need to step back a little bit into history just briefly, going back almost 50 years to 1972, when the city banned new billboards on public property. That was so popular and so successful that the ban was extended in 1985 to private property. And of course, the reason for doing this was there was an appreciation of the aesthetic qualities of this city and an opposition to the proliferation of intrusive commercial advertising. As a result of that, in fact, the bans were very popular, as I said. But there's something missing here that is not often appreciated, and that is a relationship between the bans and the promotion of aesthetics and increasing the viability of the local economy, because the city at that time understood that quality of life issues matter, that the reason many people want to come here and work in this area, to work in San Jose, is because of the quality of life we have. And there is a dollar value to that. The people back in 1985, the city administration understood and appreciated. If we could have the next slide, please. These are quotes from articles in the Mercury News that appeared in 1985. And I find them interesting because I want to emphasize what they emphasized: the relationship between beautification, curbing excessive commercial signs, and encouraging economic development. This was repeated again and again in Mercury News articles. Encouraging the revitalization of downtown and major thoroughfares, the ban and expression of very strong commitment on the part of the city council. All of that was true. In 1985, it was a forward-looking vision, and it lasted for many years. But if we could move to the next slide, please. We can see that in the past 5 years, a very aggressive billboard industry has convinced the city that digital billboards mean money for the city, that digital billboards will improve the local economy. We have listened to that argument. We have reviewed the material they have presented. We have looked at the vast literature on this subject, and we're very confident in our conclusion that there's really not that much money for the city. If the city is willing to honestly look at the total costs involved in constructing digital billboards in San Jose. We also are very confident that these off-premise advertising billboards will not improve the local economy. We can provide details, we'd be very happy to. But at this point, what I really want you to focus on is that in 2018, the city of San Jose repealed the billboard sign ban. They repealed the ban, and in so doing, we have the adoption of phase one, which is the underlying foundation of the construction of digital billboards on public property, the first two of which appear to be here at the airport. And before getting into those details, I want to refer to one last point in this overview. Over 2,000 people responded to a planning department survey of public opinion regarding digital billboards. That was conducted this year. As you can see from the slide, almost 93% of the public oppose digital billboards on freeway-facing property, like the two properties here at the airport. If we could move to the next slide, please. So what does that mean? We believe it means the Airport Commission is faced with evaluating approval of two digital billboards on airport property, about which we assume you do not have adequate information to reach a really informed decision. You have provided information, and some has been given to you by the city, but it's not enough, because we believe you have been deliberately kept in the dark by city officials who knew there would be airport properties eligible for digital billboards in 2019. But their suitability and impact were not reviewed in the 300+ page EIR which paved the way for the airport master plan and was released in 2020. So the question is, why were those billboards not included in the initial EIR? And I think the answer is because billboard proponents didn't want an authentic, comprehensive EIR that included these billboards for fear it may have raised questions that they did not want to answer. I think it's important to interject here that none of the 22 digital billboards on public property were ever subjected to the scrutiny of an EIR. None of the proposed 22 billboards on public property under phase one underwent an EIR, not in 2018, and certainly not during the 2.5 years of the problematic rollout of the implementation of phase one. So we have to ask, why was an initial study addendum initiated at this point? And it was because the proponents of the billboard proposal were desperately looking for a justification. And they thought they could find it in this particular formula. And if you look at CEQA, which CEQA governs the EIR policy, CEQA points out clearly that an addendum to an EIR is a technical document making only technical adjustments. So an initial study to and an addendum to an existing EIR never really finds negative impacts greater than those identified in the existing EIR. That's why this process was chosen instead of an authentic, comprehensive EIR, because this process is basically a whitewash, a 184-page whitewash conducted at an unknown expense to the taxpayer as a substitute for an authentic EIR. So the question is, why didn't the commission know about this study until it was completed and announced 2 weeks ago? How is it the commission was kept in the dark about something that obviously relates to your business? If we could switch to the next slide, please. This lack of transparency covered up the fact there was no competitive bidding process for proposals to erect digitals on these sites. No RFP was issued. Instead, an existing airport vendor, Clear Channel, was simply selected to be awarded the contract for these 2 digitals. Does the public know the terms of the deal? Well, we've heard earlier tonight some of those terms, but up until tonight, no, they did not. Does the public know why competitive bidding was bypassed? Not really. The question must be asked, what authority decided not to include these billboards in the original EIR? Who spent an unidentified amount of taxpayer money to conduct an initial study addendum, which, as we said before, constitutes a whitewash? Who suspended competitive bidding and also reduced the requirement to take down 4 existing billboards for every digital going up? It's obvious the public does not know answers to these questions, and we would guess neither do you. If we could have the next slide, please. What's happening here? That is a question that needs to be answered. We believe the city staff are expecting the Airport Commission to rubber stamp the approval of the first new billboards on public property since 1972. And they want you as the commission to take the heat for doing so without being fully informed before endorsing this scheme. If you look at the 2 photographs here of the proposed billboards on airport property, the approval of these billboards would put the city of San Jose into the billboard business and unleash a path for many more digitals that will remain standing for the better part of this century And that's due to a state cash compensation requirement for the removal of existing billboards. Practically speaking, once they go up, it's very difficult to take them down. Next slide, please. So what should the Airport Commission do? We advise that you refuse to provide the city with another justification for bad public policy and refuse to approve these billboards when that opportunity comes before you. We suggest the commission should ask the following questions, which are really at the heart of the matter. Why were these billboards not in the master plan EIR? Why was an addendum completed instead? Why was an RFP not issued? Why were the takedown requirements changed? Which agencies and specifically individuals were responsible for these decisions? Looming behind all of this is the question, why should San Jose incur the risk of opening the door wide to never-ending litigation over billboards? This is what is happening in Los Angeles, and all you have to do is look to Los Angeles to see what could be happening here. We thank you for the opportunity to present our view. We'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Matthew, do we have others that have asked to speak on this topic?
Yes, you do. 1 second. Next is Deshelle Leeds.
Yes, please unmute yourself and go ahead for 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Dashel Leeds, the Conservation Assistant for the Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter. I'd like to support John's comments. The Loma Prieta chapter is also in opposition to the billboards. In my previous comments during public comment, I talked about the destructive power of light pollution, how it's linked to increased rates of cancer and fatal disruption of wildlife. And so for this comment, I'd like to focus on the positives of avoiding light pollution and blight. Our residents will have healthier sleep and healthier bodies. Our wildlife will be able to forage, mate, and migrate without light disruption. And in the past, artificial light has been seen by many as a symbol of progress. But with the scientific knowledge we have now, the reality is actually quite the opposite, where the most ecologically progressive cities adopt measures to limit the spread and scale of light pollution. And so cumulatively, we can achieve something beautiful. We can create a future where people can look up into the night sky and see the stars, where we can reflect on the beauty of this world and our place in the universe. And I think this is a future we all deserve, and it starts by choosing not to build new, unnecessary sources of light pollution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Mr. Kazmierzak, who do we have next?
Next is John Miller.
John just spoke.
John just spoke. Sorry, let me lower his hand. Jason Hemp.
Welcome, Jason. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thanks for allowing us to speak. I'm also one of the steering committee members of No Digital Billboards in San Jose, along with John Miller. And I just wanted to add a few additional comments. First, I want to acknowledge and thank the commissioners that posted the memo just before this meeting, highlighting several questions about these electronic billboards, and I highly recommend everyone to check that out. I think a lot of those questions that are not answered, we share those concerns. Second, I just also want to emphasize that this is, as John said, this is the precedent being set here. These are going to be the first two huge electronic digital billboards over 1,000 square feet each that are going to go up in the city of San Jose in over 36 years. And it could potentially be opening the floodgates for dozens more soon after that, and almost impossible to take down once they go up. The revenue that appears to be planned and generated from this seems to be a drop in the bucket relative to the overall city budget and airport budget. So I would request to keep that in mind and ask yourselves, what is the trade-off being made here? What are the tangibles and intangibles? And just as a practical commuter coming down the freeway, right? Driving southbound on 101 versus 280, you get bombarded with a bunch of billboards on 101, and there are several popping up, new digital ones in Santa Clara, right? But once you get into San Jose territory, you're like, ah, finally, you know, what a relief. And you can see the views of the Golden Hills, you know, Lick Observatory. And I think that's a unique aesthetic that we have here in San Jose that we may lose if we put up billboards, and it could make us anywhere USA. So those are the few points that I would like to share in addition to and supplement what John said. So I appreciate your time, and I hope you take our concerns under consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hemp. Matthew, who do we have next?
Next is Juliana.
Juliana, please unmute yourself.
Hello, my name is Juliana Pendleton, and I am the Environmental Advocacy Assistant for the Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society. I would like to support the previous comments that are opposed to the proposed digital billboards along Highway 101 on airport property. The Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society has opposed city electronic and digital billboards since 2017. We were opposed to phase 1 and phase 2 of the city's electronic billboard signage plan, and we thank the city for halting phase 2. Electronic billboards create visual blight, contribute to pervasive light pollution, and negatively impact San Jose residents, wildlife, and ecosystems. In addition to the effects of light pollution Dashiell mentioned, light pollution is also a major contributor to the insect apocalypse, and bright lights confuse and can be fatal to both migratory and native birds. The proposed billboards will be visible from the Guadalupe River Trail, detrimentally affecting the Guadalupe River's riparian ecosystem. Moreover, you mentioned protecting the burrowing owl habitat earlier this meeting. Bright lights such as these billboards can harm this sensitive species as well. Instead of further lighting up our night sky and harming almost all forms of wildlife, San Jose can become a leader in protecting our night skies by saying no to any proposed digital billboards in San Jose. We strongly urge you to refuse the suggested billboards on 101 when the time comes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Pendleton. Mr. Kazmierzak, who do we have next?
Todd Williams.
Mr. Williams, please unmute yourself and feel free to address the commission.
Good evening. I just wanted to say that I was reviewing the San Jose materials. I became aware of this during phase 2 and was strongly objection to it. When you look at this phase 2, there's hundreds of letters from the public in opposition. When you look at phase 1, there's none. I find that awfully suspicious. And being that I didn't know about it till phase 2, I'm assuming the public was also not made aware of it. Also, there was this big advertising that they would be reducing existing billboards. There would be this trade-off. It seems like that has fallen to the wayside. And when you read the initial report, city staff recommends against erecting these type of billboards very clearly. Cutting down trees for billboards is unconscionable. The San Jose Guadalupe River Trail has the potential to be the Golden Gate Park of San Jose, and littering it with billboards would be a shame. And as a final news flash, people's cars have GPS now, and people have cell phones, so there's no need for directional signage. Please, please reconsider for the future of San Jose. Money isn't everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Kazmierzak, who do we have next?
Next is Tina.
Tina, please unmute yourself and address the commission.
Hi, hello, this is Tina Morrill, and thank you for letting me speak again. So, you know, our esteemed mayor has these very cute sayings, and one of them comes to mind, which is, this is the camel's nose under the tent. So just as John Miller said in his very excellent presentation, this basically opens the floodgates. And so I am completely opposed to the billboards, and I am amazed at the significant number of people who are also opposed. And last, I just want to point out that the removal of trees for any reason, I mean, unless they're diseased or there's some kind of public hazard, is foolish, especially at this time when we have such horrible problems with our climate and trees do nothing but help us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kazmierzak. Who do we have next?
Next is Katya.
Katia, please unmute yourself and address the commission.
Hello, this is Katya Urban, and I'm with the Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter, the volunteer water committee chairperson. And the Sierra Club is concerned about many environmental impacts of these signs, especially the increasingly known impacts of light pollution, which Dash talked about earlier. But we're also concerned about aesthetics and distracting from the enjoyment of the natural environment, which the city also has great interest in. And this whole project being based on policy 6-4, the main purpose of which is to regulate signs and, to quote the policy, to confirm the city's continued interest in regulating signs on city-owned land to promote an aesthetically pleasing environment. I've driven a lot south along this stretch of 101, and I've always appreciated the views of Mount Hamilton just along this stretch, and I'm sure I'm not alone. And this is the kind of impact these kind of billboards will have. They will have people distracted and stressed out by flashing artificial light and advertising rather than enjoying the natural scenery. They will not convey a good impression of the city as people approach our airport. If the city really cares about aesthetics, these billboards should not be approved. And as others have said, they will open the door to 20 other similar billboards on city land nearby, and no existing billboards will be removed. And another thing I'm concerned about is that the environmental report says that the north sign will use custom shielding of LED modules to eliminate spill light towards the airport's air traffic control tower located 5,600 feet away. And there's no mitigation for the river from these impacts, which is only 400 or 500 feet away from the sign. The south sign has the mitigations, but not the north. So it's clear that these signs have light pollution and glare impacts for a great distance. And both signs will have negative impacts on the riparian corridor and light pollution in general.
Thank you, Ms. Irvin. Unfortunately, the time has expired. We do appreciate your comment. Mr. Kazmierzak, would you please give us the next person to address the commission?
Sure, next is Tim.
Tim, please unmute yourself and you may address the commission. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tim Clausen. I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I have 2 points. One is that until somebody can show me a study done by the Department of Transportation somewhere in this country that says that having divided attention on our freeways is a good thing, it goes in, it contradicts our whole vision, our Vision Zero that San Jose has put together. So if that's what we're trying to get, no accidents on our freeway, putting a huge billboards up is just starting the beginning of the end in terms of traffic, and we already have bad traffic. The second is I question the fact that this contract is going to go to Clear Channel when I just read a recent article on how Clear Channel has completely failed in their contract with VIIIA in terms of keeping our bus stations clean. And that was part of their contract, and this is their contract. And I heard Miss Bray say earlier that Clear Channel will be in charge of maintenance. Seems to me that the ground maintenance and the, again, more blight underneath them, I question that. So the divided attention is key. We should really think about that. We don't need more commercials every 6 seconds being run as we're driving down our freeways. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clausen. Mr. Kazmierzak, who do we have next?
Next, we have Michael.
Michael, please unmute yourself and address the commission. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael. I also just kind of want to echo a lot of the things everyone else is saying about how I sort of oppose the idea of building billboards along the Guadalupe River. I bike along that trail all the time, and it's a really nice trail, and there's already not that many trees there, so it's really would be a huge shame to remove trees that are already there and have a billboard there. And then additionally, billboards are just kind of lame. I mean, like, it's just sort of a representation of a place that's boring and the same as everything else. And right now, San Jose is kind of like a nice place in that they don't have them everywhere. And like a lot of people said, you get to see the hills or whatever. And like, if you're at the airport, you're going to be flying into the city. And instead of enjoying the hills, you're just going to be watching some, Coke ad or something. So I think it's just it would be a real step backwards to go like remove trees to build billboards. And that's kind of all I had to say.
Thank you for your comment.
Those are all the comments I have at this time.
Great. I appreciate everyone's input on this. At this time, we'll close public comment on the issue, and I will go to the airport commissioners for comments and questions. Mr. Head.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. I think Dan mentioned that maybe when we were doing the first introductions to Lisa Marie that I had served on city council, and indeed I did. And probably, I guess, from the perspective of this point in time, it was a historic event because it was in the early 1990s and not all that recently. But the perspective of my term on council gave me an idea to spend a significant amount of time on the relative value of the public policy of allowing billboards. Electronics were certainly not in the discussion at that point in time, allowing billboards on any to advertise from an off-site point of view. The laws were in place when I came on council, but there was a fair amount of discussion about implementation and where the city was going. And I'd want to indicate to my fellow commissioners that it's been a issue I've been aware of for a long time. I've strongly held views, and I doubt I would change them. I was frankly unaware that the council had taken steps to go in a different direction. If you were looking at a kind of easy, and it's oversimplified, I agree, a direction of approach that I was active in supporting on my council days, it would be the contrast between I-280 and I-101 or US 101. There's historic reasons why 101 is the way it is, and 280 was able to be developed the way it is. But the goal of the public policy, I think, for me, is in that direction. So the process that we're going through now, and whether it's valid or anything, those are legitimate questions, but I'm not addressing those. From my personal perspective, it is bad public policy to have business, have as a business in the city of San Jose, the selling of advertising space, except where the goods or services actually being produced. So again, an oversimplified manner, if you've got a pub and you've got a sign hanging outside the pub, an electronic or however, no problem. I would not be in favor of any billboards at the airport, and the specifics we're talking about now, and our responsibility is advice to the council from an airport perspective. I would not support a advertising sign, electronic or otherwise, anywhere on airport property. I would also comment for staff that I think the discussion of whether this public policy is a good one should have made it to our airport commission work plan, or should have been included in a reference to the airport master plan studies we did over the last year and a half, 2-year period of time. I would hope that would not occur again in the future. I would, if we vote tonight, and I'm not sure we are, I would not be in favor of it. And when I am able to vote, I will not be voting in favor of the proposed signs on airport property.
Thank you, Commissioner Head. I had a conversation with Mr. Kazmierzak earlier today where he said that, well, I want to back up for just a moment because I want to share this with Commission. Obviously, there was a lot of attention drawn over the last week or so after the planning department had come out with their information. We, as a commission, asked more than 3 months ago to have information about the billboards presented to us. And I want to direct your attention to our May 10th, 2021 meeting. During that meeting, the item was on our new business for discussion and possible action being deferred to the August 9th meeting. Now, deferring to me is the same thing as a postponement. And from Robert's Rules of Order, people get tabling and postponement mixed up with one another. But postponing is really what we did by deferring the issue to a date certain. And it's entirely up to this commission, in my opinion, after reviewing Robert's Rules of Order, that if this commission chooses to send a recommendation one way or the other to the city council, which is what we are charged with doing, to provide advice to the city council, that we may do that. It was placed on the agenda by the airport. It was placed as a possible action item. And the only way that action item or possible action item can be removed is by a majority vote of the commission to remove it as an action item. So it's entirely within our purview to make a recommendation if the commission chooses to make that recommendation. I also want to say the question that I asked earlier tonight was, will this go through the process and come back to the airport commission? It's not going to come back. They'll go to council more than likely before we meet the next time around. And so I believe that the airport commission needs to make a decision as to whether or not they're going to weigh in on the issue or whether we're going to simply punt the football and allow city council to make that decision. Realistically, regardless of what decision we make, whether we support it, whether we do not support the billboard proposal, council can override any decision that we make. So I want to open it up to the rest of the commission to speak in reference to this topic. Ken Pyle, Vice Chair Ken Pyle, go ahead. You need to unmute yourself, Mr. Pyle.
Sorry about that. I'll be brief. I've spent literally the last 3 days, probably 24 hours, probably 8 hours a day over the weekend and today studying this issue. And the output was the 7-page memo that we submitted, and it's on the website. And I think 5 categories, 40 different questions. Several of those were answered in today's presentation. But despite all that effort, I don't feel like I have enough information tonight to vote on what we have. And so I would actually like to make a motion that since as an advisory committee to the council, I think it's our duty to advise them to reject this. And so I would like to make that motion, because what is the point of this commission if it's not to advise? And it's just an advisory vote anyhow. So that's my motion, is that we vote to reject this as brought to us.
This is an informational briefing, Dan, as I explained to you 3 weeks ago.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kazmierzak, I'm going to call you out of order on this issue, sir.
Okay, well, legal counsel has stated that in order to make a proper motion, we should have had the motion on the agenda as you want the motion to exist.
No, sir.
Okay,
And
again, I'm just sharing with you as to what I've been told from city legal attorneys.
So it may not actually carry any legal weight, but I want it, if the commission votes on it and says this is what we thought, it may not carry any legal weight, but it will be documented.
Okay, legal has said that this is an informational briefing. This is going through the EIR process. The folks through the EIR process, were concerned that this is an informational briefing for you. This is not for a vote up or down to provide advice and consent to the Director of Aviation.
Okay, Mr.
To try and
Kazner,
include you guys into the process and have a public component of this into it. So all of these concerns could be captured through the EIR process.
and
That's
this
what we're
will
attempting to
not
do
be
through
brought
this.
back to this commission, and
You can ask for it to be brought back to the commission.
New business, items for discussion and possible action. This was deferred from the last meeting. I'm sorry, but according to Robert's Rules of Order, you posted the agenda and it shows a possible action item. You cannot turn around on a Friday afternoon at 4:26 in the afternoon and
We
tell
had
us
this conversation
to
3
vote
weeks
on the
ago.
issue.
Mr. Conley, we had this conversation 3 weeks ago. I, and the vice chair.
So
I explained these things at that time to you. This is the first that I've heard that you wanted to vote on it. I did not hear what you wanted to vote on it. I was not able to include that on the agenda. We had the same issue 3 years ago when we did the 1 inch and inoperative thing.
okay, there is a motion on the floor. I'm going to honor that motion. Mr. Pyle, would you please restate your motion?
Yes, and before I do though, I do want to state that 3 weeks ago, we had no idea what this was about. We did not get any information from the airport ahead of time. I had to personally dig through a lot of material on the city's websites that's not obvious at all. You'll see it in the footnotes of what we sent in. And that is part of the issue here, is that we're getting informed better by people who aren't part of this process than we are by the city. And furthermore, it prevents us from doing our job, and we sit up here looking like idiots because we have no idea what this thing's about. So anyway, back to the motion.
So there is a motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion? Commissioner Hendricks, you have to unmute yourself. I could tell you were saying something, but I couldn't hear you.
I'm thinking before we make a motion, can we have further discussion amongst the commissioners about the topic? Because I, like most of you, this was news to me. That presentation that we heard earlier from Mr. Miller, we were kept in the dark. We weren't informed. I do believe that there's an element of light pollution. I do believe that more than anything, the distracted driving on 101, we've already got enough distractions, and now we're going to add this monolith, 2 of them, on 101, potentially causing additional problems. And there's been no studies that I can find that electronic billboards cause accidents, which I really did try to find that information. But common sense tells me that digital billboards can impair intelligent driving. There's always the element of the texting and everything else is going on out there. There's already so many other distractions. But I'm more concerned about the process here. I'm concerned that we weren't informed. I'm concerned about the EIR. I'm concerned about cutting down 43 trees for 2 signs. I'm concerned about the growth of this whole electronic concept throughout our beautiful city. We have a beautiful city and it's being eroded day by day. So if I am permitted to vote, will not be supporting the proposal, but I do agree with Ken that additional study is required, and whether we have a subcommittee on this, where we can report out to City Council our findings. I feel rushed, I think. And on the surface, I think the whole process, they weren't forthcoming. And I know everyone's really, really busy. But it's just an email, kick us an email and say, this is what's happening. We don't get that communication for 3 or 4 months, and then all of a sudden it's a ram. And I really, really want to devote more time to this. I read policy 6.4. I've read policy 634 on the riparian corridor. I'm concerned about the land use, airport safety zone, and maybe the woman who gave the presentation could assure me that these two signs are not in the runway protection zone that's mapped in the land use plan for the County of Santa Clara. So I have a lot of concerns that I feel the commission needs more time to make an intelligent decision. But if I was to cast a vote right now, based on the information I have, I would have to go no. And I was hoping that we could have more of a discussion amongst all the commissioners before we make a motion, to just make sure that everyone maybe feels the same way or they don't. I would just like to know how other people feel.
Commissioner Pyle, do you want to temporarily withdraw your motion?
Sure. The main thing was I was thinking we'd have discussion afterwards, but I'll withdraw it. I'll temporarily withdraw it.
Normally,
just so we can have a
under
discussion
Robert's
first.
rules, you know, there should be a motion, a second, and discussion. But you know, I'm fine with having the commission discuss this, and then if it's still desired, you're welcome to make your motion. If someone seconds it, we can discuss it further. Who else on the commission would like to discuss this? Commissioner Patel, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, so it took a lot to kind of review this. Like other commissioners have said, you had to kind of dig through the city's website and you know, figure out where the proposal was. There's a lot of things that we need to look at from the airport commission as well as the aviation standpoint. We hear about pilots complaining about Levi Stadium being right there and getting light pollution as whenever they're taking off. So is this just going to add to the problem? Are we sure that, you know, the light emission shields that are in place for this billboard are actually going to do the job? There's a lot of things we need to look at for this in order to even give a recommendation. So I think I'm sort of on board that we need to have our questions that are posted in the memos that were on there from our fellow commissioners. We need to have those questions kind of answered and flushed out before we can even say yes or no to this.
What guarantee do we have from the airport staff that this is going to come back to the commission if it's not addressed tonight?
We can always have a special meeting if that's what you would like to have at a later date and time. Part of this is, again, remember, it's going through the EIR process. The purpose of the EIR process is to incorporate all of these questions into it so that we can provide answers. The EIR process only started at the end of July. So until that had started, that document that was produced and publicly released, you know, that is the information that's being used to try and provide everyone with information about what's going on with it. So, you know, again, Ryan, I don't know if you want to add more to what the process is going to be for this and what the anticipated timeline would be. But, you know, again, we don't want to make you feel rushed right now trying to make a decision, which is why a vote right now would be premature, given that the EIR process itself isn't even completed in terms of taking in the comments from the public.
Commissioner Head? Go ahead.
Matthew, would it be reasonable to suggest that if let me back up a bit. I think the commission would like to be able to weigh in on the issue, let's say 2 weeks before it's taken up by city council. Is the city council going to be the ultimate decision point on this process?
I believe they will. I mean, city policy is already city policy. So there is, you know, the policy's already been generated by the city. I don't know, Ryan, if you want to speak as to where in the process this would go, or Drew, at what stage we expect things to happen.
Yeah, I can add to that. So where we are right now, as you mentioned, Matthew, is we just started the EIR public comment process. It runs through August 25th. After that time, our consultant, David J. Powers, will go and address all comments in the EIR. That will likely take several weeks to a month, at which point it will be ready to be referred to City Council in the fall, late this fall. So those are the next steps forward. Again, the comment period goes through August 25th. And the best way for all these comments to be captured in the public record is to submit those comments to the project manager, Adam Peterson, so they will all be addressed in the EIR public comment process.
Thank you, Ryan. Could I continue?
Yes, please,
So
Commissioner Head, go ahead.
Assuming that what Ryan has said is the city council will be the deciding body on this issue. And if subsequent to tonight, it's discovered that planning commission or even staff approval action will be the alternate instead of city council action, would it not be reasonable to allow or have a special meeting if required? Maybe our next meeting covers it, but have a special meeting 2 weeks before whatever that decision point is, so that we as a body can make a recommendation relative to whether the contract with clear communications, whoever is a good thing for the airport to do. We need to I think what I'm hearing from my fellow commissioners, we want to be able to offer the advice formally as a commission. And there's some commissioners that feel that there's been an opportunity, or there's not been an opportunity to do that. We've been cut off of the path in a way. And I'm saying, okay, but if there is an opportunity, can't we not assure ourselves that we have that opportunity, and either taking it up at our November meeting if that works, and if November doesn't work, call a special meeting with a single purpose agenda item for us to weigh in and offer advice. But there's a lot of commissioners that haven't spoken on whether that's a good idea or not. So anyway, I'll throw that out as an idea, not make a motion.
Commissioner Henkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I too, I guess, am a little concerned with the lack of information that was available to us prior to tonight's meeting. I think we want to do our jobs. We want to be able to be in a position to make educated either opinions or suggestions or recommendations. So I would be very supportive of working through the process, following the addendum to the EIR, fully understanding the comments that come back, the staff responses that come back from that, and to be in a position to look at the pros and look at the cons. I still personally would be open-minded both ways, but I frankly at this point don't have enough information, but would like to have the opportunity to get more information, so we would have an opportunity to put in a recommendation one way or the other. And if that means a special meeting, I think the commission here would be up for that additional effort or whatever it is, so we can truly come in with a good, enlightened and educated position. And so that would be, if we could work with staff to be sure at some point that we'd be able to come back and have a discussion and make a formal recommendation, that's something I'd support.
Other commissioners' comments? Commissioner Pyle.
Unless another commissioner wants to pipe up, I don't want to take too much of the air in the room here. But one of the things, and again, this is the process thing, we get buried in the EIR, in the weeds of the EIR, and EIR, or whatever this is called, because it's kind of an addendum, but we miss the essentials of the basics of the business proposition. This happens over and over and over again. And it seems to me that is what we should be focusing on. The Airport Commission should be given that information. You know, what are the top line? What's the bottom line? What are the risks? And that should be a discussion item. And that discussion is not really allowed in this forum because we're focusing on the EIR. And in fact, the questions that were submitted, probably half of them are on those business related issues, things that were kind of outside of what would traditionally be even the EIR, even as Commissioner Hendricks has mentioned, safety. It's not mentioned in the EIR, although that's a pretty darn important topic. Things like indemnification for what happens if someone does crash. because they're looking at the billboard. Those kinds of issues, I think, and I don't see those being discussed here or being discussed at city council. And as was mentioned, we're looking at a pretty small amount of revenue. I think it's maybe 0.3% of the city's or the airport's $230 billion. We're looking at $500,000 or something. And there's been a lot of time and money invested in this. And the question is, does it even make sense, right? And so that's the kind of discussion I think that needs to happen. And I would fully support doing something, as Commissioner Head suggested, where we have that opportunity to make that discussion before it's decided by whoever it's going to be decided by.
Other comments? We haven't heard Commissioner Baines. Do you have any comment? And
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening to everyone. So I agree with all you because we didn't have chance to look at the report. And also, Matthew, I just want to find out from you, let's say on EIR, Environmental Impact Report, if there is a lot of opposition, is the city going to review it again, or it will be on the council decision? So the other thing I was saying is that let's have a meeting with all our commissioner and with the project manager or project engineer as soon as possible. So whatever questions we have, so they can be answered, and maybe something we are not clear yet. Maybe city already has done those things. So I think sooner the meeting with the city staff and us will be beneficial.
Thank you, Commissioner Baines. Are there other commissioners that have comments? Who have I missed? I missed any other commissioners? All right, so from what I'm hearing, this airport commission wants the opportunity to provide our input on this issue. And more than likely, the decision for city council will come before our November meeting. I believe it's clear from the comments of the commissioners that they want this to happen. And I think that we have an obligation to the people of the city of San Jose to have some input in this. I am disappointed with the lack of information that had been provided through the city. And so I'm going to entertain a motion from the chair asking commissioners to vote on whether or not they would like to have a special meeting, number one. And the second part of that is the special meeting would be to specifically address this issue and to provide our recommendation to city council. That would be my motion. Is there a second to that motion? Commissioner Head.
I'm not sure the chair can make a motion. That's a procedural question, and I'm not sure. I'd be happy to make a motion to the effect of what I talked about earlier, that the issue returned to us 2 weeks prior to whenever the final decision is made, if that needs to happen before our next regularly scheduled meeting.
So I would just,
or if the chair can the chair make a motion?
According to Robert's rules, it is allowed, but it doesn't happen often.
Well, let's just make sure, since we're kind of process oriented in a lot of this discussion, I move that staff schedule for us a discussion and vote for recommendation to city council on the issue of the contract for the electronic billboards at least 2 weeks prior to whenever its final decision-making would take place at city council.
Is there a second to that motion? Commissioner Pyle, unmute yourself, please.
Sure, it looks like Commissioner Hendricks wanted to, but I'll second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, I'll second it.
All right, there is a motion on the floor and a second. That motion is to reconvene as a commission specifically on the topic of the billboard issue. and that any meeting will take place at least 2 weeks prior to any action going to city council. Did that cover your motion, Commissioner Head?
Yeah, what if when the 2 weeks prior to when the city council will be voting on the issue that we want to offer our advice on?
Okay, discussion on the issue. Commissioner Henkin.
Yeah, just a quick question in terms of, I think the approach here of having a meeting and being able to make some sort of recommendation prior to council meeting, want to make it in effect effective. And maybe staff can tell us, prior to going to council, there will be a staff report, there will be additional items. And I think we'd want to be in a position, and maybe it's in the staff report or some other means, that we could pass along our recommendation. So maybe it is in advance of 2 weeks, maybe it's 3 weeks, or whatever that process is for formally getting, our recommendation one way or the other in the process in some sort of form. So maybe staff can answer in terms of what type of time frame that would require to be part of it. Like, in the staff report typically that goes to a city council, maybe that goes to the planning commission first. It'll go to city council with planning commission voted, blah, blah, blah on it. Perhaps, looking at a timeline that would enable a commission recommendation one way or the other to be included in that type of staff report.
Certainly, there will be an EIR report that comes out of this. Again, the purpose of tonight was really to introduce all of this to you guys, to provide you with an understanding that the process is underway, to give you an update that and an opportunity to ask questions about it, so that you could learn about the process, so that you could learn that the EIR process was, to give you an opportunity to submit comments to that process so that they could be incorporated into the final report. This was not meant to be a finalized step in the process. So there will be an EIR report that does come from it. Ryan, is there Ryan had outlined the process for that, where it was going to come out potentially a month after the comments were taken in, and each comment would be answered to or discussed in through that process. So, that was the intent of this.
Commissioner Powell, I see you. Let me get Ryan to answer that question.
Sorry.
I didn't hear the question.
The question was, will there be a report on the stuff coming out where they can get additional information as to where things are in the process? And what information has been provided so that they can make an informed decision?
Yeah, we have our staff here from David J. Powers. I'm going to invite them to comment on the process. As I mentioned before, the next step will be to collect all the comments between the airport, our consultant partner, David J. Powers, and PBCE, and respond to every single one. And that the time that takes, whether it's a month, 2 weeks, is entirely dependent on how much public comment we receive. But as far as any additional details on what the end result, maybe we can have Mike Lisenby. Can you provide a bit more detail?
Hi, Ryan. So this is Mike Lisenby. I'm from David J. Powers and Associates. We're a CEQA environmental consulting firm, and we assisted the city with preparation of the addendum for the project. So what Ryan's saying about the process is correct. So all comments on the EIR addendum will receive a formal written response. In the case of an addendum, those responses will likely go into the staff report that gets submitted to City Council as part of their packet. So that would be one place to see all the formal responses to your comments prior to the city making a decision. And that staff report is released prior to the City Council meeting.
How much in advance of the City Council meeting?
I'm not clear on the exact timing. It's, I believe there are procedural rules about the advanced release of those prior to the meeting. You'd have to check with the planning department on that.
Commissioner Powell, you had comments.
Yeah, two comments. One, I just looked at the agenda that you sent on Friday to me, Matthew, and it sent to Chair the Chair Connolly, and it says new business discussion and possible action. So to me, that seems pretty clear that we could possibly take action on this tonight, whatever that action is. It says it right there. But the other thing, if I may, if I could share my screen to show some of the examples, but beyond the EIR, again, I would say half the questions we had were around kind of, things that aren't in the EIR. These are fundamental kind of business questions and fundamental, do we want to do this type of questions from a quality of life perspective? Is it worth the effort? That sort of thing. And I have to admit, 3 weeks ago, I probably would have been said, let's do it. Let's get these billboards. Let's make the money. And my mind has been changed in those last few days. And much of that mind has been changed because of the process. So I'm all in on the idea of Commissioner Head that we should have another meeting at least 2 weeks in advance of the of whenever a decision is going to be made. But I think the information we need has to go beyond the EIR, and it has to address some of these other fundamental issues, which is in our document. Thanks.
Let me just ask Michael for a moment, since you were responding. At the point in time that your company gets all of these questions and you respond and you prepare a report, what kind of realistic time frame does that take?
Like Ryan mentioned, it will depend heavily on the volume of the comments and the content of the comments. So it is a little hard to predict. Typically, it takes a few weeks to a month to draft them. There is also a review period where the planning department will review the responses. These responses are prepared in coordination with planning at the city. So there is review on that end before they become final. So I would say 1 to 2 months for a project like this would be a reasonable estimate.
All right, Commissioner Henkin.
Yeah, Michael, thanks for that. Isn't there a recirculation type of period after you've completed the responses to comments, that there's a certain period of time before you actually can go to hearing? I mean, again.
So because this is an addendum, if this were a new EIR, there's something called a final EIR that does get circulated for 10 days before any hearing. An addendum is different. It's just representing changes to a previous EIR. It does not have that same requirement.
Okay.
That's why most of the time responses to comments on an addendum, if there are any, get presented in the staff report to City Council.
Okay. Can I have another follow-up?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Question, and this is again for Matthew. Matthew, am I understanding that the anticipation or it's expected that the Airport Commission will forward its comments, concerns, and recommendations through the EIR comment and response process versus some other avenue that says we've considered it and we have taken a vote and recommended X, Y, or Z?
The hope would be both. Is that you would take the opportunity to submit any comments you wanted, or the public has through the EIR process, but also to take advantage of this opportunity where we have at this meeting a number of people who are experts on it, at which you could ask questions to about the current, either the documents that have been submitted, about the presentations that have been provided to you. If you have questions, you have staff here who are the experts who can be happy to try and talk to some of those things.
Yeah, and that's great, and I appreciate that. I wasn't sure if it was in lieu of per se. If it's in addition to, and that's great. And that's exactly, appreciate all the information we're getting today. Again, some have expressed, and I'll include myself, wish it was a little sooner so we could have hit this meeting a little bit more, running, if you will. But if there's a process to continue working with you, staff, and getting more information as we're moving forward, then again, I fully support that process. So we can have all the information.
So since this is not a full EIR, obviously there isn't a 10-day circulation period. It's just it could just be presented to council. Is that correct, Michael?
Yeah, forgive me for not knowing the exact details, but it becomes part of the staff report to council, and that does get released in advance. The exact timing of that is something I'm not aware of, and we'd have to check with planning on that.
It's probably 7 days before 7 or 10 days before their meeting, just like our meetings are.
I would
So
think something like that, yes.
Chairman
Commissioner
Conley?
Head, yes.
So, but I think if I'm understanding the way this would come to council is it would go to Rules Committee first and and worked into the council calendar via rules, which would give the airport staff a heads up on when the date it would be going to council, and then they would be able to secure, estimate that and make sure that we had enough lead time to offer our advice. I don't think it's I think it's a doable process that Matthew and the staff can make sure we have a 2-week lead time on before the council acts to provide whatever advice we wish to on this issue. Am I being over optimistic, Matthew?
I can schedule an additional meeting. I
understand that would be the what might have to happen. My own personal feeling is our next regular meeting will handle it, but we would have to be able to schedule, be willing to schedule an additional meeting if in fact it happened before November.
Certainly.
Yeah.
I just want to point out too is that Commissioner Hendricks has had her hand raised.
I'm
sorry.
I'm sorry. Let me go to Commissioner
Kathy.
Hendricks, and I'll go to Commissioner Pyle. Sorry about that, Commissioner Hendricks.
Just very quickly, I neglected to thank all the people that took the time to communicate with us as a commission. All the folks that did a copy and paste, or all the folks that came up with their own justifications for not supporting the signs. I really want to appreciate and acknowledge their efforts. And I neglected to say that, so I want to say that now. My take on this, a special meeting is 2 weeks enough time. And I want to, let's see, I lost my train of thought here. I want to make sure that what is our outcome? Is it going to be whatever position we take for or against? Is it going to be a formal memo to City Council from the Airport Commission? We don't have staff to produce something like that. So will we get city support? What does our document look like? What does our recommendation look like? Because I don't want it to get buried in 174 pages of an EIR. I'd rather have a dedicated memo to and from and make it a part of the EIR, but I want it to be a standalone document. I don't want it to get mixed in with everything else. So you know what I'm trying to say? What does the report look like? What is the output?
So normally when these things have happened in the past is there is a specific section in the council memo that references the commission. And in that section, which is specifically called out, it's got its own little section and box and header and everything. That is where we incorporate airport commission or commission in general, feedback and input. And so that's where it would normally state that in the council memo, whatever position the commission took.
Okay, is it going to be a 1 or 2 liner like our minutes, or is it going to be comprehensive and the reader would know from reading the content of your memo how the airport, what thought process went into that memo? You know what I'm saying? I want to make sure it's not so high level and so just, I want to make sure that the reader understands the position the Airport Commission takes, but not just a broad paintbrush stroke. I want, a little bit of detail would be really nice to see, just to make sure that the council understands where we're coming from either way, for or against.
I think, Matthew, it's obvious from the comments of the commission that we want the council to hear what our take is on this issue and not have it slid in the way so often does, where there's a lack of transparency. And that's where the concern is at this point, that the commission on this particular issue, these 2 billboards, phase 1 of this program, we should have the responsibility of giving a thumbs up or thumbs down recommendation to city council. And it appears that the airport doesn't want us to do that. That's what the appearance is.
Okay, well, if that's the appearance that's given, that's not at all the intention. Again, the whole purpose of bringing this to you now was to incorporate you at the process by which we are actually including public comment into the process. This is trying to get you involved at the start of this. So again, like the commission has done in the past, the commission is always able to empower one of your members to go speak on behalf of the issue to the city council itself, if you want to provide the nuance that you feel is necessary that would not be incorporated into a staff memo. Again, all those you're fully welcome to do that, to empower a member of your body to do that, to provide that. You're right. Normally in the staff memos, we state what the motions are and we give that information and we're clear about it. I'd like to believe that, I've always, when you have an opinion, I express that opinion. I don't change it or sugarcoat it in any way. But you're right, the member's not always going to provide that type of nuance of this type of discussion, or even discussion, we haven't even discussed some of the details of the things. That wouldn't always be easy for staff to convey what you are thinking. And it's often better for the commission to convey what it's thinking, or to express it as a body. That's the challenge with any body is, you have 10 different members, and you got to come up to a consensus as to, and that's often represented through a vote. So.
Thank you, Matthew. So we have a motion and a second on the floor.
You also have, sorry, has his hand up?
I'm sorry, did I miss? I'm sorry.
Dan, Dan,
yes, go
Matthew,
ahead.
I have a question for you. When you say public comments, which area you are talking about public? Is it city-wise or any public can answer on that one?
Can you are you speaking about the addendum to the EIR process, Commissioner Baines, or are you talking about the airport commission or the public making comments?
Yeah, I'm just talking an EIR when people are making comments. So which area you are like, I just want to see, is the public in the neighborhood or anyone from city of San Jose or neighboring city can make comments on that one, or how is that done?
So my understanding is anyone can submit a comment to the EIR process or the EIR addendum process. And that process closes on the 25th of August. And after that, the consultant will respond, which is David Power, J. Powers and Associates, would respond to the comments that were made from the public and put a document together that then goes through the process that eventually goes to city council. So that's the public process. The process that we're referring to is whether or not the San Jose Airport Commission is going to give a recommendation on this project, thumbs up or thumbs down, to city council in addition to whatever goes on with the EIR. And correct me if I've misstated this. Commissioner Head, does that sound about right? Okay, he nodded his head yes, just for the record. Did that answer your question, Commissioner Baines? So you could submit to the EIR process a personal letter expressing your opinion. At this point, we could not submit anything to the EIR process as a full commission because we're not, they're asking us not to vote on the issue tonight. By the time that we were to reconvene, the EIR process would be over with, and it would be in preparation for going to city council.
Yes, I think that cleared my answer.
Thank you. Commissioner Pyle, your hand is up.
Yeah, so how much is the EIR study costing, or the addendum to the EIR? Any idea?
No, I don't.
So my point is that it's probably a lot of money, whatever that is. I mean, maybe not to the city, but to me personally, it would be. But it's a significant investment, and it seems to me that before the city would make that investment, they must have some kind of business case, high-level business case that says, yeah, this makes sense to take it to this next step to spend whatever $1,000 it is to do an addendum like this. So it seems to me that that business case had to have been done before July, before this EIR group was commissioned. So it seems to me that that's when we should have been involved. So at least we would have known, okay, so here's what we're looking at doing. We think we could get about this much revenue. We think this is the expense. We think this is the potential risks, and this is the upside. It seems like that should have been a good business process before you make an investment in an EIR like this. So, but we always dive deep into the EIR and get the mechanics of how all this stuff works before we see the bigger picture.
So, Commissioner Pyle, I'm not the expert on this, but it's my understanding that Clear Channel is paying for this EIR addendum 100%. So there's no cost to the airport to be borne by this.
So my question on that is, I in some of the memos, and I have to pull it up here, I had it up for a minute and then I couldn't find it, but it seemed to me that the advertising, there was going to be another RFP once the interactive door advertising RFP was complete, which I believe was complete around October 2019. Then there would be another RFP that was mentioned in one of the memos before City Council. So was there another RFP that gave Clear Channel the outdoor advertising as well?
So in part, you're mixing different things. So the city as a whole, so what you're looking at is the city policy on electronic billboards or electronic advertising versus the airport. So within this, the city policy that they adopted, the airport was called out specifically separate from that outdoor advertising process and the RFP process, because we already had gone through the RFP process for advertising. Clear Channel has been doing outdoor advertising for us already. So we had the RFP for the airport done already through that. So the city itself was going through an RFP process for its own separate purposes through the Office of Economic Development.
So did that RFP, because as I understood it, it was just for what we had existing, but did that RFP actually include advertising for third parties that aren't part of the airport?
I can't speak to what the Office of Economic Development has put out in their RFP. I don't know enough about that. Again, I know from the airport, we were separate from that other part of the city process. So Clear Channel was selected through an RFP process for indoor and outdoor advertising.
Well, I'm asking the RFP for indoor and outdoor on the airport property. Did that include advertising for third parties? Do you know? That was done by the airport, right? It wasn't done by economic development.
So I don't understand the question. Clear Channels are authorized to do advertising, and that advertising includes third parties. I mean, like they advertise for Zoom at the airport.
Okay, so it does include third parties, and it would include for billboards that hadn't been approved yet by the city on this property.
Okay,
I did. Commissioner Pyle, I think if I may interject here, sorry, Scott Whitner, Deputy Director of Aviation, just because I think there's a miscommunication. I think what Matthew was trying to describe is that the RFP process that you're referring to is strictly with regard to the city billboards that are independent of the airport's two billboards. So the city is considering billboards as a whole in their policy, but then the RFP that would take place would strictly be for the non-airport billboards, because the airport already has an advertising partner in place, a longstanding, that was done through its own RFP process dating back to 2007. So they're really two separate efforts.
And what I'm asking though is that one that was started in 2007, then was extended later, because I remember we were kind of informed about that because they introduced this interactive. Was that process was outdoor advertising of third party that was in there the whole time from 2007
Correct.
on?
And in fact, they have been doing it, and Kim can correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I've seen it with my own eyes. So they have been doing outdoor advertising of third parties.
But not on billboards in San Jose. SJC.
Not on billboards specifically, no, but on other outdoor properties in and around the airport. The side when there used to be a few years ago, there was a huge banner when you drove into the parking garage. It was much bigger than a billboard. It was on the side of the parking garage. They've done street pole banners, for example. As you enter the airport. So there have been a number of outdoor properties, and again, Scott or Rebecca may be able to provide more details on that, but.
Yeah, and Scott
Thank you.
Riddle, airport property, acting principal airport property manager, and all these comments are correct. Clear Channel has been in place since 2007. In their RFP, they proposed a number of different packages. And they also proposed that they could provide us a project plan for other things that we couldn't even come up with back in 2007 when we did this. And so if you remember, we did something with Super Bowl. We had a lot of different things that were added to the package in order to leverage the in-terminal with the external and the Super Bowl and all that. And what we wanted to do was be able to say, we want to leverage the assets at the airport. And that's why we're going to get a significantly more income than what you would get at a normal billboard, is because we're looking at that whole program as a package that like our indoor program can do and things like that. And so they've been with us. We went through the RFP back in 2007. We tried to make it as open as we could so that we could take advantage of all these different opportunities. And we also made sure that we went to council and said that we did have this partner in place and that we preferred to use them to leverage those assets when the council was looking at the citywide program.
Thank you. A more mundane question, but are we really looking at 4 billboards because there are 2 of them in a V shape and there's 2 sites?
There were originally, when this whole thing started, the city approved 4 locations.
No, I didn't mean locations. Are we looking at 2 locations with 2 billboards because it's a V? There's 1 on each side. Is that?
Yes.
Okay, that wasn't crystal
There was
clear.
4 locations identified, and then of those, you can have theoretically multiple signs. We had actually, when we started this conversation, had 2 other locations that we were looking at, but the technical limitations made it so that we couldn't do those after we looked.
That one was Seaboard. That was interesting because it looked like the Sharks, it said in the memo that the Sharks actually controlled the management of that. And I wondered
Well,
if
the
that was a
Sharks had
mistake.
been given that space under a separate agreement with the city. And so there was other spaces that had been identified in the city council memo. But when we went to Clear Channel, there were other things that just, these 2 were the only 2 that we could actually pull off.
Thank you.
Other questions from commissioners?
Yeah, I just wanted to button this up real quick. So
Go ahead.
So as I guess members of the public, we're asked to put our comments that we have for the EIR into there. And so what we're looking to do is get those questions answered during the EIR process. So then, a few weeks before council votes to approve this, we're going to then have a additional meeting to kind of go over and review the answers to it. Is that what we're going for?
I believe the intent of the motion that's on the floor is to allow the airport commission an opportunity to weigh in on or make a decision on this process and send a recommendation to city council. Whether that is a recommendation to support or not to support, that would be the goal of the motion that was made by Commissioner Head and seconded by, I think it was Commissioner Pyle, or did I miss that one?
Okay, so then for the questions that we have, would we ask them, would we send those to Matthew, or would we send those into the EIR process to the email?
I would do both.
Okay.
Yeah, you send them. So you have an opportunity now to ask questions if we can answer them. Otherwise, they should go to the EIR process. I won't be able to answer them. They should go to the EIR process itself. But you do have experts on this meeting right now for the purpose of answering your questions.
Well, and I would assume that these experts would be available when we have our next meeting as well, since we will end up scheduling an additional meeting for the airport commission, specifically on this topic. Is that not going to be the case, Matthew?
That's the vote you're taking.
Right. But I'm just saying, if the commission votes to do that, I would assume that you would provide experts for that next meeting as we're trying to come up with an evaluation to support or not support.
I would bring back the same airport staff. Yes.
Okay. Well, and in fairness, and I just want to say this to airport staff, and I appreciate you bearing with us, we haven't had a lot of time to review this. And that's the issue. We haven't had enough time to delve into everything. If we were to vote today, it probably wouldn't be favorable. It may change in the future.
Yes, that's why there was no vote supposed to take place today, to provide you with the information so you have an informed.
Except
ability to
had we
make a
not
decision.
pushed the issue, this would have gone to council without coming back to us. And that's really what the issue is. Commissioner Powell, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, I think the business questions need to be answered either by the airport or by council. Some of these issues clearly are not for this venue, but it's council. Like, for instance, I noticed that there's no political or religious advertising. I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but it raises a red flag to me. Then, I do have a bunch of environmental questions here, which, we'll submit. And we could keep going through these questions, but I think they need to be kind of addressed, offline, because there are so many of them that we just don't have answers to.
Okay, so I have Commissioner Hendricks, then Matthew Kazmierzak, then Joe Head. Commissioner Hendricks, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a question for the expert staff on hand right now at our meeting. I want to take advantage of them. I'm still concerned about the runway protection zone. So can somebody assure me that these signs will not be erected in the runway protection zone?
Yes.
Drew Niemeyer, go ahead with your response.
Yeah, this has to go through the formal review and approval process. Each of the projects, especially those that are close to the airport, have to go through the FAA review process. They would certainly raise their hands if there were any issues associated with it, as they have in the past.
Okay, so these two signs are outside that boundary.
Yeah, I don't know if Ryan is on. I don't know if we have an exhibit, but the answer is yes.
So, and I'm going to go to Ryan instead of Matthew right now, just because we're on this topic. Ryan, go ahead.
Confirmed they are both outside of the RPZ, and also confirmed they have received determination of no hazard through the FAA 7460 process.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Matthew, there you are.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say is if there are questions that Ken would like answered, I would encourage him to ask something that's.
Okay, here's one. Section 3.6.12 of the report. It seems like MS-16.2, it's on page 104, should apply, as there could be potential for solar on these sites. I think it's 118 megawatts of energy this thing is going to be using a year, which I think calculates to about 20 households of energy. Well, I was kind of surprised it was that much. And my numbers could be totally wrong, but I based it on what San Jose Clean Energy says an average house uses. So that was my comment there. And obviously I'm not an environmental engineer, but it seems like that was one thing where, yeah, maybe this is an impact on that one. That was that particular thing. So that's one. I don't know if you want to get to the nitty gritty of that. It just seems like you kind of need to do some research on that. I had questions that, what's the carbon impact of the removal of the trees? I know that they're going to be replanted somewhere else, but those, take a while to grow. And what was the purpose of those trees in the first place? Who planted them? Why'd they plant them? Was it to block the vision of the airport? So, it wouldn't be distracted. Drivers wouldn't be distracted peering into the runways, which I always like to do when I drive by. We talked about the 4 billboards and the answer to that. There was VN-2.3. This is all under the environmental section of what we sent. This is on page 18. How has the public been given the opportunity to provide input on the design of the public and private development within their community? The design's already done. I guess the answer would probably be the ISA, but always, again, it seems like that's kind of after the fact. But I could keep going on. It's probably better just to submit these to the EIR, and that way people can respond to them.
Commissioner Hendricks, did you have your hand raised? Okay, Commissioner Patel.
Yeah, I just wanted to say if we could kind of come to a conclusion here. I do have to drop off here in a little bit, just because I have another engagement I have to get to.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second on the floor to have this come back to us in the form of a special meeting so that the Airport Commission could have input on the proposal prior to it, a minimum of 2 weeks prior to it going to City Council. If there's no more discussion, I will ask Ms. Adams to call for a roll call vote.
Okay. Commissioner Patel,
Yes.
Commissioner Hendricks,
Yes.
Commissioner Head,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith. I don't think she's here. Commissioner Henkin,
Yes.
Commissioner Baines,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pyle,
Yes.
Chair Connolly,
Yes.
and the motion passes.
The ayes of the chair, the motion passes on that. I do want to throw a potential date out to you, which will be about 1 month prior to our normal meeting, which would be October 4th as the potential meeting date at 6 p.m. Monday evening at 6 p.m. October 4th. Whether that's in person or whether that is via Zoom would be yet to be determined. Any other questions on this issue? All right, we're going to, and thank you all for bearing with us. It was a challenging topic. Let's move on to item number 8B, the crane guidance and update. Ryan Sheelan, Airport Planner. Ryan.
Good evening. Here we go. Thank you. We can stick on the first slide. Okay. Thank you again, Ryan Sheelan, Airport Plan and Development. So we're here for an update on the construction crane fee program analysis we've been working on since we met last with the Airport Commission in May. We have been working with our technical airspace consultant, Landry Brown, who is also with us on the first part of the construction crane guidance study. And they also completed the downtown airspace and development capacity study in 2019. Next slide, please. So just executive summary of the analysis that we did. So the forecasted airline impacts that occur during runway 12 left, 12 right departures, south flow, so towards the downtown is what we've taken a look at. And these are based on the heights from the crane guidance study. So that was how the impacts were analyzed. And so in our analysis, we looked at the impacts to the airlines from a denied boarding standpoint. So denied boarding as a denied passenger. And you'll see DB in the presentation standing for denied boarding. And then the cost associated with the denied boarding is DBC. And so in the winter season, we have more impacted departures. I think that's well known. We're in South Flow much more in our winter season, but also what we learned is in our summer season is characterized by higher load factors. And so therefore it creates a similar denied boarding cost across both seasons. So we refer to two seasons in this presentation, winter and summer. And winter is from October to March, and summer is from April to September. And so down here on the bottom, the third bullet, so the denied boarding financial impact, so our total impact, which you're going to see up here in the table on the right, 63% of our denied boardings at SJC are on our international routes. So Tokyo, London, and the majority being Beijing. And so you see up here, and one other thing to note is this analysis was all based on pre-COVID flight schedule, so 2019 flight schedule. So you see up here on the right our forecasted costs to the airlines. And up on the top, you'll see three distinct columns. So the full flight schedule loaded in, so all of our domestic, all of our international flights, and the costs associated with a full year of crane fees that have been calculated. The second column over is removing that Beijing flight only, and all of the other traffic, as we saw, again, Beijing accounting for the majority of those international denied boarding costs. And then the third column over is no international flights at all. So just our domestic flight schedule. Then you'll see it's full year broken down, and then also by the 2 seasons that we're discussing. Next slide, please. Okay, so just getting into the denied boarding methodology completed during our analysis. So there's 2 types of denied boardings, voluntary and involuntary. Voluntary denied boarding is when a passenger has been offered a seat on their current flight, but has accepted compensation in exchange for a seat on a later flight or another carrier. This is what probably everyone here has experienced, you know, getting bumped off a flight, voluntary bump, the most common. An involuntary denied boarding is where a passenger has not been offered a seat on their current flight, regardless of their flight reaccommodation and any compensation they might receive. So according to these government data sources, for domestic passengers only, on average, about less than 5% of denied boardings are involuntary. So we took that number and we assumed the ratio of involuntary was set at 5%, and voluntary at 95% for denied boardings would be in line with these government statistics. And there's a couple scenarios where the industry data errs towards being more conservative. So that's when the denied boardings are occurring close to departure and the volunteer solicitation process is compromised. So say 30 minutes before departure and you have to get 30 people off the flight. Or also the denied boardings are a significant percentage of aircraft capacity and well beyond the upper limit of how many passengers were volunteers. So you'll see later in our presentation, for example, the Beijing flight would be looking at almost 150 passengers. That's half of the plane. Next slide, please. Okay, so getting into the voluntary and involuntary denied boarding cost. So a domestic voluntary denied boarding cost is valued at about $300. That's basically the cost of a free ticket. And so we doubled it to $600 for international voluntary denied boardings and international flights having less flight reaccommodation options, especially at SJC, only operating once a day, or not even, not multiple times a day as well. And then and you'll see those numbers plugged in the table over on the right. And so for an involuntary denied boarding, USDOT actually sets the minimum compensation that must be paid out by the airlines to those involuntary denied boardings. And it's based on the length of the passenger's delay. So $775 for 1 to 2 hour domestic and 1 to 4 hour international delay is the minimum amount, and $1,550 for a 2+ hour domestic and 4+ hour international delay. And so we set the domestic at $1,000, which was actually based on the Government Accountability Office statistics and feedback from a major air carrier and what they used in their overbooking model. And so also we set the international involuntary denied boardings at $2,000, again, for the same reason, less flight reaccommodation options. Our international flights don't operate every day at SJC. And so one important thing to note is these numbers for domestic and international voluntary and involuntary denied boardings do not include the per diem costs that the airlines also factor in. So meal, transportation, hotel. And so per diem for SJC originating flights, both domestic, international, you can see in the table, was set at $200 for meal and transportation cost. And that doesn't mean that every single person gets that amount, but this is the number that is used in the airline industry. We vetted it with a major US carrier. And so for the per diem amount for SJC destination flights, we also add in a $300 hotel cost. So you'll see that as the total down there at the bottom of the table, $500. So the $200 plus the $300 hotel cost. And again, the $300 hotel cost is based on standards within the airline industry and policy, not necessarily the cost of a hotel in San Jose. Next slide, please. Okay, so this table, this is the denied boarding cost per passenger assumptions. And it was looks like it's a little bit hard to read here, but I'll go through it. So basically, to get all the way over to the total on the right, it's a series of weighted formulas, and I won't necessarily go through all the formulas, but just give a high level. So the traffic mix of denied boardings, which is columns A through D for SJC originating and destination, that data is taken from DOT data. And you'll also see the voluntary and involuntary breakdown in each column, and that all adds up to 100%. So moving over to the hotel and per diem vouchers, that was exactly what we discussed in the last slide. So it was set at $200 for originating flights and $500 for destination flights, including that hotel cost. And then we move over to columns G and H, and we get the airline denied boarding cost per passenger. Again, we saw those in the previous slides for 300 and 600 for voluntary domestic and international denied boardings, and 1,000 and 2,000 for involuntary domestic and international denied boardings. And so we bring those weighted numbers over into columns I and J and add them up to get our total of $990 for this first line, which is the Asia market, which is the actual denied boarding cost per passenger for those airlines flying that route. Next slide, please. Okay, so when we analyze the seat penalty assumptions, we looked at them by route, airline, and aircraft. And what we did to get there is we took the maximum load factors that we derived from the aircraft assessment studies completed in the first part of the study, which you have all seen in previous slides and council presentations. That's our 4 different markets and our aircraft types and whatnot. And so we ran the current load factors based on calendar year 2019 data, so pre-COVID, again by month, carrier, route, and aircraft type. And then we compared those two. So we compared the maximum load factors from those performance assessments versus the actual load factors to estimate denied boardings. So you'll see that in this table as we just take the top line is Tokyo Narita 787-800 on ANA. And so column A is the average seats per departure reported to DOT, so 172. Column B, again, sourced from our aircraft performance assessments, except for some domestic airlines that did actually give us their actual performance data. So that's column B, 119. And we subtract those two to get the total in C, which is lost seats per trip, assuming that is 100% load factor. And we didn't just look at load factor at 100%. We did look at it at the average load factor, then 10 points and 15 points in each direction. So that is kind of the methodology and how we got there. And if we go to the next slide. So this is percentage of departures in South Flow, something we've all probably seen in the past, not this specific table, but previously departures impacted by South Flow, we had our monthly average of about 13% of the year were in South Flow. So when we took a deeper dive into the numbers and we analyzed them on a monthly and hourly basis, which you'll see in this table, you see it makes a big difference because it allows us to hone in on the actual impacts. So we're comparing the actual weather data by hour and month. And then on the next slide, we'll see that we merged it with our actual flight schedule. Another important thing that you can see in this slide is that year round, we're in double digits South Flow from about 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. So it's not just the winter months when we're in South Flow. We do have some significant South Flow year round. But you'll also see, for example, if you take our current month, we're in August, by the time you get to 1 or 2 o'clock, we're already down to about 2% South Flow for the day. Next slide, please. Again, sorry, this is a little bit hard to see on this slide, but so this is the departure detail for the month of August. We did take the the departures for the entire year, but we're just using an example here. So on the top row here, we can see our, or hopefully everyone can see here, our different carriers, our routes, our aircraft type. And if we follow that over to the left-hand column with the red text, that is the south flow data from our previous slide. And then the next column over is the departure times per day. So a few key takeaways from this slide: 45% of our scheduled flights in August depart before 9 a.m. time of the day when south flow is the strongest. So this hits our Hawaii market really hard. Another thing to note is our international flights are disproportionately in the afternoon or evening hours when typically south flow is less. So taking an example, which I have circled here in red, taking British Airways, for example, they depart at 8:10 p.m. And you'll see that for the month of August, they had, you could follow it down. They had 31 departures at 8:10 and south flow occurred 1% of the time. So when we actually applied our weather data to our flight schedule, for example, just taking British Airways, their actual impacts and denied passengers, the total cost cut down in a third from earlier in our analysis when we hadn't actually taken this step. So it allowed us to really focus in on when the impacts actually happen. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the denied boarding summary by season and also the financial impact to the airlines. And you'll see down on the bottom right, $2.8 million in financial impact to the airlines, with about 42% of those impacts happening in that summer season of April to September, and 58% of the impacts in the winter season, October to March. You'll see in red our international carriers, again, that make up 63% of those total fees in the program. And in green, you'll see our domestic carriers that supplied their actual performance data and seat penalties. So we have Alaska, Southwest, and Delta actually provided their real world numbers to us. And again, that's in green. And then also at the bottom, you see the breakdowns by the seasons, and you'll also see how many denied boardings passengers are estimated for the total year. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the forecasted costs to the airlines, which we saw back in the first slide, and now we have added an administrative fee to administer this program. Right now in this slide, it's set at 15%. We're still evaluating between 10 and 15% for the city and the airport to actually administer this program. And so what this created was the example monthly crane fee rates. And so what we're looking at here in the table, again, it's broken down by those seasons on the left-hand side, those 4 columns. We have April to September, so the summer months. On the right-hand side, the winter months, October to March. And down the left-hand side, we see the number of developers that are actually operating above the downtown building height limits with their crane. So if there's multiple developers, they would all split the fee. If there's one developer, they would be on the hook for the whole fee. And these are monthly rates in this table. And so again, just going through the columns, all the way over on the left, the first column, the full schedule, that's our full domestic international flight schedule and the associated cost per month. And as we go over, second column is excluding only Beijing. Third column, which is highlighted, will most likely be our recommendation as we move forward and to City Council. And so our recommendation is going to be based on what our actual our current flight schedule looks like and our near-term flight schedule. So we do have BA loaded into our flight schedule, and you know, there is a lot going on in the world, obviously, with the pandemic, and they continue to their return is still fluctuating, but we are expecting them to come back now. So this is the column that we're currently targeting for the start of the crane fee program. And then all the way over on the right, again, is no international flights at all just our domestic flights. And so both seasons again shown here, but the one highlighted is what we're going to recommend. So that's only the BA international flight and our full domestic flight schedule. Another thing to note is that the fees in each column are calculated separately and they shouldn't be added together to get the total. And again, these are monthly fees. Next slide, please. Okay, so just a little bit on the program and the developer fee and how we're anticipating to administer it. The rates would be adjusted annually and applied to all new project building permits in the downtown, the Diridon Station area. So that crane guidance area we set in the first part of the study. PBCE would not issue the building permit without receipt of crane fee payment from the developer to the airport. There would be a reconciliation or true up, whether it's season end or at project closeout. So what that means is the developer won't overpay or underpay. So there's going to be that reconciliation. And then finally, the big part of it is what is this going to provide back to the airlines? The idea is that there will be a landing fee waiver program. The airlines must make a request for a landing fee waiver to the airport. It would not be the obligation of the airport to seek out the airline for denied passenger boarding information. And then how that will actually happen is an airline denied passenger boarding reporting form will be attached to the monthly airline activity reporting form that the airlines already send to our airport finance group. And with that, that's the last slide, and we're available for questions. Thank you.
All right, do we have questions for Ryan? Commissioner Pyle.
That's great work, Ryan. Great report. My only question would be if another route is added. I noticed Boston wasn't on there. I was kind of surprised. I would think that would be equivalent issue of Newark or JFK. But say a route like Boston is there, or say a Miami or Washington D.C. or whatever, and then is an annual adjustment period going to be enough, or should it be shorter period, like 6 months or something, in case a new route is found to have these issues or something?
Yeah, thanks for that question. We do plan to start it by adjusting annually, but not that we cannot change that in the future and shift to, like you mentioned, a 6-month period. But we're also trying to keep it realistic, and there's quite a bit of administrative work behind this program. This is also something we're going to be, leading in the country, no one else to do a program like this, but we do have very unique problems at SJC with the downtown right on center line, just over a mile to the start of downtown. So something we'll certainly consider. We definitely expect the first year of this program to have a bit of a learning curve.
Commissioner Head.
Yeah, perhaps I missed it. When do you anticipate the policy will go into effect?
Great question. So, Commissioner Head, so right now we expect it to go into effect assuming that council accepts the crane fee program. We are targeting the end of September, early October, assuming they do accept this crane fee program. It will go into effect immediately after that.
Thanks.
Other questions from the commission on the crane policy or the crane, I guess we're not calling it a policy, but the guidance. Ryan, so a couple of questions. What happens when there's multiple day delays? At one time we were flying to Shanghai 3 days a week. I don't know if there would ever be a situation where a passenger would be bumped for multiple days. Obviously, you get bumped today and you've got the same situation possibly tomorrow. How is that handled?
So the goal of this program, Chair Connolly, is to partner with the airlines. It's not necessarily to offset 100% of the airline's costs associated with denied boardings or passengers. So how we're going to do that is through the landing fee waiver program. It's not necessarily going to be 100% reimbursement of their cost. Again, we're looking to partner with them. So if an airline ends up providing vouchers to a passenger because they're there for 2 or 3 days, that's a bit beyond what we're committing to or what we're proposing here with this crane fee program.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from commission members? Commissioner Henkin.
Yeah, Ryan, how do you plan on dealing with the buildings that are already have their cranes up, already have their building permits? And so there's not that, at least what you have in bullet point number 1, that sort of catch there that has to be paid prior to the issuance.
Excellent question. It's kind of going to be the case through our discussions with the city attorney's office that they are not going to be part of the program. If they're currently under construction, which is only about 3 projects, 3 high rises, which is this is really targeting, then they're going to kind of, they start it before the implementation of this program and will not be subject to it for the rest of their construction duration till they complete the building.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Ryan, I just want to say, I thought you guys did a really good job of nailing down the fees on this. That's a lot of information to crunch, and it does make a lot of sense. And so I appreciate the hard work on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on item 8B, crane guidance? Ryan, thank you very much. I want to move on to item number 8C, parking and ground transportation update. Ashwin Naidu, the airport operations manager. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. So I'd like to take just a brief moment to kind of go over the parking and ground transportation initiatives that we've been working on here recently. Wanted to start off with our new economy lot parking garage. So as of July 1st, we opened up the new economy lot parking garage. It gives us an additional 900 covered parking spaces in our economy lot, and overall, including the garage itself, as well as the surface lot, it gives us 2,500 spaces in the economy lot at our lowest parking rate. So great for the customers in terms of providing convenient parking, again, at a good value. Also includes a new parking guidance system for customer convenience. And essentially what that is it uses loops going in and out of the garage, as well as the parking gates themselves, to give the customers the number of parking spaces that are located in the garage versus a surface lot. So as they approach the economy lot, they can make a decision as to whether they want to go into covered parking. If the number is getting close to capacity, they can go ahead and go to surface parking. So allowing that to be the most convenient way for the customers to find parking. So excited to get this open. We've already seen a lot of use with the parking garage and the economy lot. Right now we have a promotional rate of $15 a day that the customers are enjoying. So we'll do that for the foreseeable future as we get other portions of our new parking system up and running. And just to kind of give you guys an idea, a rough ballpark of what we're doing revenue wise, right now we're doing about $1.8 million for the month of July. And to compare that to 2019 pre-COVID, in July, we were doing $3 million. So about 39%. And we've steadily been cutting into, what our revenue was pre-COVID. So in May, we were about 51% about what we were making. In June, that went to 42%. In July, now it's 39%. So we're seeing a really good trend in terms of that non-aeronautical revenue coming from parking. And if you look back at how things were in COVID, obviously There wasn't a lot of travel with the restrictions. There wasn't a lot of parking revenue coming in. You know, I think June of 2020, we were like $541,000, so not even making $1 million. So it's a huge increase during that COVID timeframe. So good news from the parking revenue perspective. Next slide, please. So speaking of our new parking system, we are installing a brand new parking system, $7 million. And we're going to a system by the name of Ski Data, a well-known parking system, not just within the United States, but internationally. And that new parking system upgrade started with Lot 1 in July, and we're estimating all of our parking lots will have this new Ski Data parking equipment by late November 2021. What does this new parking system give us? So it gives us an improved license plate recognition system, a online reservation system and customer loyalty program. So one of the cool things that the license plate recognition system gives us the ability to do is, right now, we don't have the ability to do prepaid parking. With the online reservation system, we'll be able to do that. So customers will be able to go online when they book their flight. They can come onto the SJC website. They can book their parking far in advance, get a coupon, get a promotional rate depending on how far in advance they book that parking. And then the cool thing is the system will recognize their license plate. And so as they drive up to the gate arm, they don't need to push any buttons. They don't need to pull a ticket. The system will recognize that license plate for having paid. The gate arm will go up, customer will go in, and then same thing upon exit, the gate arm will open. So it's frictionless parking for our customers, great from the Silicon Valley perspective. So we're very excited to get those programs up and running. The other thing this new system is going to give us is really a lot of great reporting and predictive analytics. And we're going to use that to do more dynamic pricing. And some of you have heard about dynamic pricing. It's what the airlines do in terms of how they sell their seats. We'd like to do the same thing with parking. So as demand increases, we can go ahead and increase the amount paid per parking space, or vice versa. If we're in a low time frame where there isn't a whole lot of demand, instead of having a parking spot empty with no revenue, we could sell it for a discounted rate and get some revenue and try and sell that parking spot. So great new system. We're very excited. We're in the midst of getting through the logistics of getting it installed. So definitely here by the end of November, we're aiming to have it up and running and have this great new system for our customers. Next slide, please. So on the ground transportation front, I'm really excited to bring on a company by the name of Safer Transportation. And what they are going to do, they are going to replace Taxi San Jose as our new on-demand ground transportation management company. So Taxi San Jose managed the on-demand taxis and on-demand door-to-door shuttles. What that basically means is that was the program that allowed those specific ground transportation providers to be able to sit on the curb in the loading areas for an extended time frame so that customers could come and on demand get a ride without having to hail a ride and wait for a substantial time frame. The cool thing about Safer Transportation and why we're so excited about them is they're bringing app-based technology to the taxi industry. So the same technology that you use to get an Uber or Lyft will be applied to taxis. And so they'll be able to better market themselves and better compete here in the industry with TNCs. The other cool thing is you'll see in that picture above, they're going to be utilizing kiosk technology. So similarly, how you come up to the terminal and let's say you have an airline that you're booking with, you can go up to their kiosk, go ahead and print your boarding pass, print your luggage receipt. Same sort of concept here. Customer can come up to the kiosk. They can go ahead and book their trip. They get a QR code. They take that QR code to the loading area where the driver scans it. Up pops their way bill saying they're going to downtown San Jose or Monterey, and then they're off and going. So really cool technology. We're excited about this new company and what they can offer our customers, as well as helping some of these local small businesses as the taxi industry and door-to-door industry that have really suffered through COVID and through these low numbers. So excited to get this new technology up and running. We have a tentative start date of September 1st. So we're going through the process of getting their kiosk up and running, getting their signage up and running. So definitely excited about getting them started. But that is it as far as the parking and ground transportation updates.
We have questions for Ashwin.
Yes.
I don't see any hands raised. I appreciate the time you took to put the presentation together. It looks like we're moving into the 21st century. Thank you again, Ashwin.
Thank you.
Moving now to item 8D, sustainable aviation fuel. Pat Hansen, the environmental project manager. Patrick, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Airport Commission. So tonight I want to briefly talk about sustainable aviation fuel and more specifically the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Partnership Agreement that SFO and San Diego are already signed on to. Next slide. So first I want to briefly just talk about what is sustainable aviation fuel for those that don't know. So basically, well, also it's referred to as SAF for short, but basically it's a drop-in replacement fuel for conventional Jet A fuel. And think about it kind of like E85 ethanol for vehicles and gasoline. And so it's made from a variety of sources, including woody biomass, oils, fats, and other wastes. And in California, the aviation sector utilizes about 3.5 billion gallons of conventional jet fuel. And those are pre-pandemic numbers, but we're well on our way back up to those currently. So making the switch to sustainable aviation fuel, it actually burns about 50 to 80% cleaner as far as greenhouse gas emissions. And if we were to switch to 5% SAF by 2025, we could potentially reduce 10 million metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions. And so one of the major issues with SAF currently is that there's a very short supply available. As of 2019, as this map shows here, there was only one producer in the United States. And I know it's hard to see, but it was World Energy, and they were producing about 10 million gallons. So going back to the total usage of 3.5 billion gallons, obviously we're falling a little short in the commercial supply that's available. That amounted to less than 0.005% of the total aviation fuel used was actual sustainable aviation fuel. I will say that since 2019, it's my understanding that another refinery has come online in the US and they are producing sustainable aviation fuel, but still it falls far short of the 5% goal. Next slide, please. So I will say also the International Civil Aviation Organization has also adopted a non-binding goal for all international air traffic to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 1.5% per year, and that was starting in 2020. So SJC recognizes the need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and we're already taking significant steps by implementing initiatives and programs outlined in the Airport Sustainability Management Plan, which I presented to the Commission back in February of 2020. And in addition to airport owned and operated sources of greenhouse gas emissions, the airport recognizes and supports the efforts of the airline industry to develop sustainable aviation fuel infrastructure and markets. And so with that, SJC intends to join SFO and San Diego in signing on to the partnership agreement regarding joint collaboration on the advancement of sustainable aviation fuel. I believe Matthew sent that out to the Commission last week. And so it's basically a non-binding agreement, legally speaking and financially speaking. It's more of a memorandum of understanding between airports to promote and carry out the cooperative activities related to SAF, including the efforts to increase the supply and use of SAF, to come to agreement on SAF related goals, including preferred feedstock, the collaboration on advocacy and planning to support scaling of SAF use. And if we were to sign on to this agreement, SJC would be a stakeholder at the SAF work group meetings along with San Diego and SFO and other airline industry stakeholders. Next slide, please. So by signing on to the SAF agreement, it would align with the goal to promote sustainable aviation fuels that is already outlined in the Airport Sustainability Management Plan. That's number 7 here. I know it may be hard to see, but to promote sustainable aviation fuels. And it also aligns with the City of San Jose's Climate Smart San Jose plan to reduce overall greenhouse gas emissions within the city. So with that, I'll take any questions from the commission. Mr. Chairman, I believe you're on mute.
My apologies. I didn't realize I hit that button. So my question is there an alternative avgas for private planes in the general aviation field, or is this only something we're looking at for Jet A because we don't have that much in the way of general aviation coming in?
Right, good question. So in regards to Jet A commercial aviation fuel, obviously that makes up the large part of emissions associated with the aircraft coming in and out of San Jose. So that's why there's a specific interest in developing markets and infrastructure statewide to bring in that mixture, to drop it into our current mix via the Kinder Morgan pipelines that go to our fuel farm. Specifically in regards to aviation gasoline, I believe you're referring to the low lead aviation gasoline.
Correct.
Used by piston driven aircraft. And so we do have a small amount of aviation gasoline on the west side of the airport at the fixed base operator sites. It's not owned and operated by the airport / City of San Jose, but I am aware that there are alternatives as far as unleaded avgas that's available. And that was recently brought to my attention. I know this is a topic of interest recently, and I have put those contacts that would potentially be able to supply unleaded aviation gasoline in contact with those fixed base operators via our property management group.
Great, thank you, Patrick. Commissioner Head.
Yes. Would it be, is it foreseen that the airport itself through our contractors would supply the sustainable fuel, or would airlines independently, at least in the short run, make their own arrangements for sustainable fuel?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so the airport, it would be more of a signing on to this agreement would show our support from a policy standpoint to keep driving towards the direction of making sustainable aviation fuel available when we're able to put pressure from a policy standpoint. But ultimately, it is really up to the fuel consortium and the airlines to decide to make the switch to sustainable aviation fuel. And so in doing this, or signing on to this agreement, it is a symbolic kind of a milestone to show that this is the direction that we as an airport are committed to going. And it would really be a matter of the next steps would be to bring the fuel consortium to the table and the airlines at some point to see if we could get support on their end to actually make the switch to bring in some level of sustainable aviation fuel mix. Because we can't mandate that they do it via our current contracts or anything like that. But does that answer your question?
It does, and thank you very much.
Okay.
Other questions for Patrick? Great, thank you for the update, Patrick. Appreciate the time and effort that went into the presentation.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 8E, legislative update, Matthew Kazmierzak.
So I provided most of this stuff in the memo. The one thing I will note is that the Senate recently passed through the infrastructure package, so that made it through the process of past the filibuster process. So it does look like that will be passing the Senate. It's going to go on to the House of Representatives. If the House of Representatives doesn't make any edits, they could pass it and pass it on to the president. If they make edits, it would have to go to conference. As of right now, the bill that currently exists has $25 billion for aviation and for airports. 15 billion of that would go to commercial service airports to be distributed over a 5-year period based on a modified airport improvement program formula and passenger counts that they will be using. Another 5 billion of that would be through a competitive grant process for terminal projects. For medium hub airports, that would mean about $750 million. And the last $5 billion is for the FAA for their contract tower program. So just to bring that into perspective, the other one is that the House of Representatives did pass a budget, a $3.5 trillion budget this past week. So that's another good news of things moving forward and going back to a normal schedule. And that's all I have for my report.
Great, thank you, Matthew. So our next meeting, special meeting of the Airport Commission is scheduled for Monday, October 4th at 6 p.m. To be determined whether we meet in person or whether we meet in via Zoom. We may have to modify that date, but we'll throw that date on the calendar for now. The meeting after that will be our regular meeting of Monday, November 8th. That is supposed to, at least at this point, be slated for an in-person meeting to discuss capital projects update, legislative update, quarterly noise report, community noise concerns. We did ask that we add to that agenda an update on the Guadalupe Gardens situation, so we will put that up there. And is our facility not supposed to be opening sometime right around there, Matthew? Do we have a date for that opening of the ARF facility, Station 20?
We do. Drew Niemeyer, Deputy Director of Planning and Development. We were actually contracted to complete the project mid-January of 22. The contractors bring it in completing it earlier, and we should have that completed by the first week in December.
Great. And will there be any opportunity for an in-person opening? I drive by the project all the time. I've actually paid it a visit a couple of times. They're doing a great job over there, and looks like it's getting ready quickly.
Matthew, we're not opposed to letting folks walk through there once it's completed.
And Commissioner Scott Widner, Deputy Director of Marketing Communications, we do intend to have some sort of a celebration in conjunction with the fire department, which of course all the commissioners will be invited to, presuming that the public health situation enables us to do it. So we're hopeful that by the time the opening comes, that COVID will no longer be a factor.
That would be great. And it really is a great project since it will be the first one in San Jose where it's airport and the city working together out of a fire station. So I think that would be great. And I think that a lot of the commission members would appreciate having the opportunity to see that. Just on a personal note, I just want to mention one of the people that work for me is a retired firefighter out of Santa Clara. They left on their Bay to Brooklyn bicycle ride to commemorate the 20th anniversary of 9/11. It's a 40-day bicycle ride across the United States. They will finish in at the old World Trade Center on 9/11, and it's commemorating the 343 firefighters that lost their lives in 9/11. And just wanted to report on that. Is there anything else for the good of the order? I know we've had a long meeting. It was a fruitful discussion. Remember, at the end of the day, we're all on the same team, friends. And sometimes we may not always agree with one another, but when we end our meetings, we want to walk out here and be working with one another towards the mutual goal of providing good information to City Council with the recommendations from the Airport Commission. So I'd like to thank all of the airport staff for the hard work that they've done in the presentations tonight, the airport commissioners that bared with us through some challenging discussions, and members of the public. Thank you so much for your input. If there's nothing else for the good of the order, I will adjourn this meeting at 21:24 on Monday, August 9th. Thank you and good night, everyone.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks all.
Thank you all. Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Dan.